Livia, the empress who quietly pulled strings. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the most powerful person in a room isn't the one shouting the loudest? What if true strength comes from a quieter place, from understanding how things really work, and gently guiding them? That's what we see in Livia, the first empress of Rome. She was the wife of Augustus, the very first emperor, and during a time when women rarely held public office, Livia found a different way to shape an empire. Here's the thing about Livia. She wasn't given official power. She didn't lead armies or stand in the Senate, but she was incredibly smart, wise, and knew how to influence. Think of it like a big school play. The director is in charge, and the lead actor gets all the applause. But what about the stage manager? They're backstage, making sure every prop is in place, every light cue is perfect, every actor knows their lines. They don't get the spotlight, but without them, the whole show falls apart. Livia was Rome's stage manager. She was Augustus's closest advisor, a constant presence, sharing her thoughts and insights. People knew her influence was strong. Some even whispered that she might have been too powerful, too sneaky. But for Livia, it wasn't about being loud. It was about understanding people, seeing the bigger picture, and carefully, patiently, moving pieces into place. She built connections, managed the imperial family, and always had Augustus's ear. And so, Livia teaches us something profound about power. It doesn't always have to be seen to be real. Sometimes, the most lasting changes come from a quiet strength, from a gentle touch that guides history from behind the scenes. It's a reminder that influence can be a soft whisper, yet echo through centuries, proving that a quiet presence can move mountains. Agrippina the Younger, her fierce love for power. Have you ever wanted something so much it felt like a part of you? Not just a wish, but a deep, burning need inside. For Agrippina the Younger, that feeling was all about power. It wasn't simply wanting to be important. It was a profound, hungry love for control. Imagine growing up when everyone around you held immense power, but you, as a woman, were often told you couldn't have it directly. Agrippina was born into one of Rome's most famous families. She saw how quickly fortunes changed, how fragile life became if you weren't in charge of your own destiny. And so, she decided she would be. Her love for power wasn't a quiet spark. It was like a powerful river, always pushing forward, seeking its path, breaking down barriers. For her, having power meant she could truly protect her family, especially her young son, Nero. It meant influencing big decisions for Rome, something most women of her time only dreamed of. Think about a team sport, like basketball, and you're the captain. You intensely want your team to win. You'll push plays, motivate others, and maybe even take tough shots because you believe in your vision and want success. That's a tiny echo of Agrippina's intense drive, but on a grander, empire-shaping scale. This kind of ambition can be both amazing and frightening. It leads to incredible achievements, yes, but it can also make people do very hard things. Agrippina believed that to protect what she loved most, she had to have influence, a firm hand on the reins. Her story tells us something profound about human nature. It shows how the deep desire for control, especially after feeling powerless, can become an overwhelming force. It can be a shield, a sharp weapon, or even a guiding light. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, what we are willing to do when we truly believe it's the only way to protect our future, or the future of those we care about. It's a complex part of what it means to be human. Cornelia Africana, a mother's true riches. Have you ever thought about what your most valuable treasures really are? Is it that cool new phone, or maybe a special pair of sneakers? For a Roman woman named Cornelia Africana, who lived over 2,000 years ago, the answer was deeply moving. She was the daughter of a famous general and a woman of high standing. People expected her to have grand jewels, big homes, and expensive clothes, but Cornelia believed her true riches were not things you could buy. There's a famous story about her. One day, a wealthy friend came to visit, showing off her own amazing jewelry, sparkling diamonds, glimmering emeralds. She then asked Cornelia, "Where are your jewels? Show me what you own." Cornelia smiled. She waited until her two sons, Tiberius and Gaius, returned home from school. She hugged them close, then turned to her friend and said, "These are my jewels. These are my true riches." Think about it like this. Imagine you've spent hours building something cool with LEGOs, or creating a fantastic drawing. The real value isn't just the plastic bricks or the paper and crayons. It's the effort you put in, the creativity, and the joy of seeing what you made come alive. Or think about a team working together to win a game. The trophy is nice, but the real win is the bond you built, the skills you learned, and the trust you shared. Cornelia felt the same way about her children. She poured her love and teaching into them, raising them to be honorable and dedicated to Rome. They grew up to be important leaders, known as the Gracchi brothers, who tried to make Rome a fairer place. So Cornelia taught us a powerful lesson. Sometimes, the most precious things in life aren't shiny or expensive. They are the people we care for, the relationships we build, and the positive impact we have on others. Her legacy wasn't gold or silver, but the living, breathing jewels she raised, who tried to make their world better. And that's why her story still matters, even today. Fulvia, the warrior wife who fought for her man. Have you ever seen someone stand up for a friend, or a family member, with a fierce passion that makes you stop and stare? Someone who would do anything, absolutely anything, to protect the people they love and what they believe in. That kind of loyalty, that deep, burning courage, isn't new. It has always been a part of human history, and we can see it clearly in the story of Fulvia, a Roman woman who truly embodied the idea of a warrior wife. Fulvia was not content to stay in the shadows, quietly supporting her powerful husband, Mark Antony. She was a force all her own, a woman who dared to step onto the battlefield of Roman politics and war during a time of great chaos after Julius Caesar's death. While other women might have simply wished their husbands well, Fulvia actively joined the fight. She raised armies, she spoke her mind, she even wore a sword, marching with her troops. Think about that for a moment. A woman, centuries ago, leading soldiers, fueled by her devotion to her husband and their shared ambitions for Rome. It's like when you see a leader on a sports team, someone who doesn't just play hard, but also fiercely defends their teammates, arguing with refs, pushing for every advantage, fighting for every point. That person isn't just cheering, they are fully in the game, body and soul, fighting for the win, as if it's their very own life on the line. Fulvia was like that, but with much higher stakes, not just a game, but the future of Rome and the lives of those she cared about. She truly believed in Mark Antony and their cause, and that belief gave her unbelievable strength. Her actions remind us that true support can look incredibly different for everyone. Sometimes it means standing quietly beside someone, but other times it means stepping into the fray, risking everything, and fighting alongside them with every fiber of your being. Fulvia teaches us that fierce devotion, even when it leads to difficult paths, shows us the immense power of personal conviction and how deeply love can make us brave. Hortensia, speaking up when women had no voice. Have you ever felt like you had something important to say, a deep truth inside, but no one would listen? Or even worse, that you weren't allowed to speak up at all? For most women in ancient Rome, that was their reality. Men made all big decisions, held public power. A woman's voice was for her home. But then there was Hortensia. She came from a family of speakers. Her father was a famous orator. Maybe challenging silence was in her blood. Rome was in chaos, and its powerful leaders needed money. They decided to tax 1,400 wealthy Roman women. This felt like punishment, not just a tax. These women couldn't vote, hold office, or have any say in government. Why pay for wars they didn't choose? It was deeply unfair. Women had no usual way to protest. They couldn't speak in the Senate. So, Hortensia did something extraordinary. She stood before intimidating men in the public Roman forum and gave a speech. Imagine being the only voice in a room of powerful people expecting your silence. It's like a new school rule, unfairly taxing students. And one quiet student bravely stands up to the principal saying, "It's not fair." That took immense courage. Hortensia spoke for all women burdened by this unjust tax. Her words were sharp, clear, and full of conviction. She argued that if women couldn't share government's burdens, they shouldn't pay its debts. The leaders listened. They reduced the tax significantly, affecting 400 women instead of 1,400. Hortensia proved that even when it feels like you have no voice, using it can be the most powerful act. Truth, spoken with courage, even by one person, can change things, echoing through history. Octavia the Younger, a sister's heart, a nation's peace. How do you mend a broken world? What if your family was split, and your own peace meant everything for your country's future? Octavia the Younger faced this impossible choice. She was the sister of Augustus, Rome's first emperor, and married to Mark Antony, one of his main rivals. Rome was tired of civil war. powerful leaders fighting each other for years. Octavia found herself caught between her brother and her husband. They were constantly on the edge of fighting again, threatening to drag Rome back into chaos. Imagine being in the middle of a huge argument, not just between friends, but between forces that could destroy everything you knew. Her heart must have ached with worry, with the weight of what was at stake. She wasn't a warrior or a politician, but her quiet strength, her deep loyalty to both her family and Rome, made her vital in finding peace. She tried to keep Antony and Augustus talking, to cool down tempers, hoping to stop the endless fighting that had torn Rome apart. Think about when two of your friends have a big fight. Sometimes, you're the one stuck in the middle, trying to remind them of what matters, trying to help them see each other's side. You don't pick a side, you just want everyone to be okay. That takes a special kind of bravery, a kindness stronger than anger. That was Octavia. She used her position not for power, but for connection. She became like a human bridge, spanning the dangerous gap between two warring shores. Her story reminds us that true strength isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet courage of a sister, a wife, who chooses peace over division, empathy over hatred. It's about holding on to hope for connection, even when the world seems determined to pull apart. Octavia showed us that an open heart can be the most powerful force for change. It can guide a nation towards a future where peace might bloom. Her legacy isn't about war, but about the lasting impact of a peaceful spirit. Julia the Elder. Life in the shadow of the emperor. Have you ever felt like everyone was watching you? Like you had to be perfect all the time just because of who your family is? Imagine that feeling, but multiplied by the entire Roman Empire. That's a bit like Julia the Elder's life. She was the daughter of Augustus, Rome's first and most powerful emperor. But instead of enjoying power, she lived under its immense weight. Her father, Augustus, was like a living god to many. He brought peace after years of war and completely reshaped Rome. And here's the thing, Julia was his only natural child. That made her incredibly important for his plans, but it also meant her life was never truly her own. From childhood, she was a piece on a political chessboard. Every marriage, every social connection, was decided not by her heart, but by what was best for Rome and for her father's power. It's kind of like if your parents were super famous, maybe the president or a huge movie star, and everyone expected you to be just as perfect all the time. But instead of just your school seeing it, the whole world was watching your every move. Every mistake could become a scandal. Julia was supposed to be the ideal Roman woman, modest, dutiful, a perfect reflection of her father's grand vision. But inside, she was a person with her own thoughts, her own desires, her own longing for freedom. The pressure must have been unbearable. Her behavior was watched closely, judged by an empire eager to find fault with the emperor's daughter. She tried to live her own life, to find joy outside the strict rules of her position. But in imperial Rome, that was seen as betrayal. Her father, the man who loved her deeply, ultimately banished her. He felt she had shamed his name and gone against his moral laws. Julia's story makes us wonder about the true cost of power and fame. Can you ever truly be yourself when your identity is so tied to someone else's legacy? Her life reminds us that even those closest to the top can feel the most trapped, yearning for a simple corner where they can just be themselves, far away from the emperor's long, suffocating shadow. Messalina, the empress who lived life her way. Have you ever felt like you had to act a certain way, just because of who you are or what people expect from you? Like there's a script written for your life, and you're supposed to follow it, no matter what. Imagine being one of the most powerful women in the ancient world, an empress of Rome, and feeling that pressure tenfold. That was Messalina. Her story isn't just about power, it's about a deep, often reckless, desire to push back against a world that tried to put her in a very small, very specific box. In ancient Roman society, women, especially those at the very top, had extremely strict roles. They were meant to be modest, loyal to their husbands, and mostly seen, not heard. Their primary job was to support their powerful partners and raise their children, always with an eye on public opinion. But Messalina, empress and wife of Emperor Claudius, seemed to say, with every choice she made, no, thank you. She wanted more. She craved excitement, genuine freedom, and to experience life on her own terms, even if those terms dramatically shocked everyone around her. Think about it like this. Maybe you're really good at art, but everyone expects you to be a star athlete, or you secretly love science fiction novels. but your friends only talk about reality TV. There's this quiet, internal pull to be true to yourself, right? Messalina felt that pull, but on a grand, incredibly dangerous scale. She broke every rule, challenging what it truly meant to be an empress, demanding to experience life fully, perhaps even recklessly. Her choices were dramatic, scandalous even, and they utterly shocked the strict Roman society. History often paints her as simply bad or immoral, a villain. But here's the thing. What if her story is much more complex? What if it's about a woman who, with immense privilege and power, dared to ask, what if I just ... live? What if she just desperately wanted to feel alive, truly alive, in a world that sought to control every aspect of her existence, even her innermost desires? We might not agree with her actions, or even understand her deep motivations, but her life makes us wonder about the true cost of freedom, and the raw courage it takes to defy expectations, even if it leads to a tragic end. It really makes you think about how we judge people from the past, especially women who didn't fit neatly into the roles society so carefully gave them. Vipsania Agrippina, a broken heart, a lasting legacy. Have you ever felt like a huge life decision was made for you, with no input from you at all? It's a crushing feeling, right? Now, imagine that decision forces you to leave the person you deeply love, the parent of your children, not from choice, but because an emperor commanded it. This is the quiet tragedy of Vipsania Agrippina. She was the beloved first wife of Tiberius, who would later rule Rome. Their marriage wasn't just for politics. They truly loved each other. They had a son, Drusus, and built a life together. But in ancient Rome, especially near the emperor, personal happiness often took a back seat to political needs. The powerful Augustus, wanting to secure the family's future, had other plans. Here's the thing. Augustus demanded Tiberius divorce Vipsania and marry his own daughter, Julia. It wasn't about love, but about forging alliances and keeping power within the imperial family. Think of it like a strong, healthy vine, growing happily with another, suddenly ripped apart because someone needed the space. That was Vipsania's reality. Tiberius was forced to obey, even though he still held deep affection for her. History says he sometimes caught glimpses of her from afar, showing his lasting sorrow. Vipsania herself must have felt immense, sharp pain, her world shattered without her consent. Her story isn't about battles or victories, but a profound human loss. And that's why her quiet heartbreak matters. It reminds us that behind grand empire stories, people like Vipsania experienced deep human emotions. Her legacy isn't about what she built, but what she endured. A lasting whisper of love, lost, and happiness sacrificed. A quiet reminder of power's true cost. Helena, finding the holy pieces of history. Have you ever held something really old? Maybe a grandparent's locket, or a smooth stone from a very old riverbed. There's this quiet feeling you get, right? Like you're touching a moment in time, a whisper from the past. Well, imagine if you were on a quest to find items that weren't just old, but that people believed held the very essence of history's most important stories. That's what Empress Helena did. She was the mother of Emperor Constantine, and when she was already an older woman, she went on an amazing journey. See, back then, Christianity was still quite new. It had gone from being a forbidden belief to something the Roman Empire was starting to accept, but it needed something solid, something tangible to connect people to its origins. So, Helena traveled to the Holy Land, to places like Jerusalem. She wasn't looking for treasure, not in the usual way. She was searching for objects believed to be connected to Jesus himself. Think of it like a detective searching for clues, but the clues are centuries old, and what they reveal could change the way millions of people see their faith. Here's the thing. It's a bit like finding a dusty photo album in your attic. Inside, you discover pictures of relatives you've only heard stories about. Suddenly, they become more real. You can see their faces, their clothes, the world they lived in. Helena's search was like that, but on a grander scale. She was trying to unearth the physical proof, the holy pieces, that would make the foundational stories of Christianity feel real and present for everyone. It wasn't just about finding wood or nails. It was about finding anchors for belief, roots for a growing faith. And that's why her journey was so powerful. It gave people something they could point to, something they could touch or see that said, this happened here. This is real. It showed how deeply people yearn to connect with their past, especially when that past shapes who they are today. Helena's search reminds us that sometimes The most profound discoveries aren't shiny gold, but humble pieces of history that hold immense meaning, pieces that help us understand our world and ourselves a little better. Theodora, from showgirl to powerful empress, have you ever felt like people judged you based on where you came from, or what you used to do, like your past choices decided your whole future? Theodora's story is about shattering those ideas. She lived in a time, long ago in the Roman Empire, when a woman's place was often set in stone. Theodora started her life as a performer, an actress or showgirl. Back then, this wasn't a respected job. It meant she was seen as someone of low social standing, someone who didn't deserve much power or respect. But Theodora had a spirit that refused to be held down by expectations. She was smart, incredibly strong-willed, and she had a sharp mind for politics. She met Justinian, a future emperor, and he saw past what others saw. He fell in love with her intellect and her fierce determination. When he became emperor, Theodora became empress, not just a queen by his side, but a true force in her own right. She advised him, made decisions, and pushed for laws that helped women and the poor, things unheard of for someone of her background. There was a moment, a huge turning point, called the Nika riots. A massive uprising threatened to overthrow Justinian. He and his advisors were ready to flee, to give up everything. Imagine being in a big argument, or a game that's going terribly wrong, and everyone around you wants to quit and run away. That's how Justinian felt. But Theodora stood firm. She looked at a hall full of terrified men and said, "Purple makes a fine shroud." This meant she would rather die an empress, wearing the royal color, than live in exile, hiding from her fate. Her courage saved the empire that day. Her life shows us that where you start doesn't decide where you end up. It's not about your past. It's about the courage you find inside you, the choices you make when things get tough, and the fire you carry for what you believe in. Theodora reminds us that true power comes from within, often from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the voice that saves everything is the one no one expected to hear. Galla Placidia, an empress who built and ruled. Have you ever wondered what it's like to stand strong when the whole world around you feels like it's falling apart? That's the story of Galla Placidia, a Roman empress born into a world of incredible power, but also immense chaos. She was a princess, a captive, a queen, and eventually a ruler who truly shaped her time. Imagine being born into one of the most powerful families, only to see that power crumble, forcing you to step up and take charge. Her life wasn't about lavish parties, it was about survival and tough choices. Rome, the empire that once seemed unbreakable, was cracking. Barbarian tribes were attacking. Emperors came and went, often violently. Galla Placidia lived through this storm. She was kidnapped by Visigoths, married to their king, then widowed. She returned to Rome, becoming a key figure, even ruling as regent for her young son. She wasn't just given power, she wrestled for it. She built it piece by piece in a collapsing world. It's kind of like being the captain of a sports team that's losing badly, and everyone is fighting, but you don't give up. You have to figure out how to keep the team together, make tough decisions, and somehow find a way to rebuild and win. Even when things look hopeless, she had to do that for an entire empire. She used clever diplomacy, she built churches, and she maintained order when everything screamed disorder. She had to decide who to trust, how to protect her family, and how to hold on to what was left of Roman glory. Her story reminds us that strength isn't always about grand battles or loud speeches. Sometimes, the most profound power comes from quiet endurance, from making difficult choices day after day, and from trying to create something good and lasting in a world that seems determined to tear itself apart. She shows us that even in the darkest times, one person's will can truly make a difference, not just for herself, but for generations to come. Hypatia of Alexandria, a brilliant mind in a stormy world. Imagine a time when the world was changing fast, and old ideas crashed against new ones. What if your brilliant mind became a danger? This was the world of Hypatia, almost 2,000 years ago, in the great city of Alexandria. She was an extraordinary woman, a philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer. Hypatia loved knowledge. She taught how stars move and what numbers mean. She also taught philosophy, asking big questions like, what is true? Alexandria was famous for its massive library, a center of learning, but outside, the city was tense. Strong beliefs sometimes led to arguments and violence. Hypatia stood for reason. She believed in using logic to find answers, not just accepting things. Think about solving a tough puzzle. You focus, follow clues, and trust clear thinking. Hypatia did this for the universe, sharing her wisdom freely. But here's the problem. In a world of anger and fear, her calm voice of reason and dedication to independent thought became a threat. Her light, encouraging others to think for themselves, was dangerous to those who wanted everyone to think the same. It's heartbreaking. Someone seeking truth became a target just for being wise. So, what can Hypatia's story teach us? It shows the incredible power of a curious mind that dares to question and learn. But it also warns, the path of knowledge can be lonely, even dangerous, when intolerance clouds judgment. Her life asks us to value independent thought, champion truth, and remember the cost paid when reason is silenced. Sulpicia writing poems that broke the rules. Have you ever felt like you had a powerful secret, a feeling so strong it just had to burst out, no matter what? Imagine living in a time when women were expected to be quiet, to keep their deepest feelings hidden, especially when it came to love. That's the world Sulpicia lived in. A woman in ancient Rome who dared to do something truly extraordinary. She wrote poems about her own desires, her own love, for the world to see. Back then, if a woman wrote poetry, it was usually about things considered proper, gods, family, or the home. And if she spoke of love, it was often veiled, hidden behind metaphors. But Sulpicia she wrote openly. She named her beloved, a man named Cerinthus, and she spoke directly about her passion, her jealousy, her hopes, and her fears. This was not just unusual, it was a quiet act of rebellion. She wasn't just writing, she was declaring her own voice, her own heart. In a society that preferred women to be heard through others. Think about it like this. Imagine everyone at school expects you to wear a uniform, and you're supposed to stick to the rules about everything, from how you speak to what you draw. Then, one day, you decide to wear a bright, colorful outfit that truly expresses who you are. Or you write a story that breaks all the rules your teachers set, and you share it anyway. That takes courage, right? Sulpicia's words were her bright, colorful outfit, her rule-breaking story. She showed that a woman's feelings, her personal experiences, were worthy of being written down, remembered, and valued. Her poems don't just tell us about her love, they tell us about her immense bravery. They remind us that finding your own voice, and having the courage to use it honestly, can be a powerful force. Her words, though few, still echo across centuries, showing us that even a single person's truth, when bravely shared, can challenge expectations and leave a lasting mark on history. Claudia Quinta, proving her innocence, saving Rome. Have you ever felt misunderstood? Like whispers followed you, and people judged you based on how things seemed rather than who you truly were inside. Imagine that feeling, but magnified 1,000 times, with the eyes of an entire city on you, and the very fate of Rome hanging in the balance. This is where we meet Claudia Quinta, a Roman noblewoman whose reputation was, let's just say, complicated. Some people talked. They said she wasn't pure, not the ideal Roman woman. In ancient Rome, a woman's honor was everything, and doubt could crush a life. And here's the thing. Rome faced a terrifying threat. Its very survival was at stake. The priests had consulted ancient prophecies and decided Rome's salvation lay in bringing a sacred statue of the goddess Cybele, known as the Great Mother, all the way from Asia Minor. So, the massive statue arrived by ship, making its long journey to Rome. But as it entered the Tiber River, something went wrong. The ship ran aground. It wouldn't move. Not an inch. The priests declared that only a truly chaste and pure person could move the ship, a sign that the goddess approved. Think about it. A seemingly impossible task, a city holding its breath, and a deep pressing need for a miracle. Here's where Claudia Quinta stepped forward. Despite the rumors, despite the whispers that questioned her purity, she walked to the river's edge. Her heart must have pounded with a mix of fear and desperate courage. She knelt, looked up at the heavens, and with a voice filled with raw emotion, she prayed, "If I am chaste, Great Mother, follow me." Then, she took her sash, a simple belt, and tied it to the huge, stuck ship, and with a strength that defied belief, she pulled, slowly, unbelievably. The massive ship glided free. It was a moment of breathtaking clarity. Her single act, born of deep belief in her own truth, didn't just move a ship, it moved hearts. It silenced the doubters. It was a public declaration, a quiet, powerful shout that her inner purity was real, stronger than any rumor. It showed that sometimes, when everything feels lost, and unfair judgment weighs you down, your own courageous action can be the most powerful proof of all. It reminds us that our true character, when put to the test, can not only clear our name but inspire an entire world. Tarpeia, a betrayal that shaped Rome's early days. Have you ever wondered how one person's choice, made in a moment, can echo through history for thousands of years? What happens when someone chooses a quick, personal gain over loyalty to their own people? This is the chilling lesson of Tarpeia, a Roman woman whose story shaped Rome's earliest days. During the very first times of Rome, the city was at war with its neighbors, the Sabines. Tarpeia was the daughter of the commander of Rome's citadel, a strong fortress high on a hill. She saw the Sabine soldiers wearing heavy gold bracelets and rings. A deep desire for these shiny treasures clouded her mind, making her forget everything else. She made a terrible promise to the Sabines. She told them she would open the city gates if they gave her what they wore on their left arms. The Sabines agreed. So, Tarpeia let the enemy into Rome's strongest defense. But here's the thing, the Sabines kept their promise, but not in the way she wanted. As they passed through the gates, they threw their heavy shields, which were also carried on their left arms, onto her, crushing her to death. It's a harsh story, but it shows something important about trust and what we value. Imagine your best friend tells you a big secret, and you promise to keep it. But then, someone offers you something you really want, like brand new gaming gear. If you just tell them that secret, that small choice could break a friendship forever, even if the reward seems amazing at the time. Tarpeia's choice was like that, but on a scale that affected an entire city. Tarpeia's name became a dark symbol, a powerful warning. The place where she was thrown became known as the Tarpeian Rock, a cliff where traitors to Rome later faced their punishment. Her story teaches us that some choices carry a weight far beyond the moment they are made. They can shape a city's laws, a people's deepest values, and how history remembers you. It reminds us to think hard about what truly matters, temporary gain or lasting honor and loyalty. Lucretia, her sacrifice, the birth of a republic. Have you ever thought about how one moment, one incredibly difficult choice, can completely change history? For ancient Rome, a woman named Lucretia made such a choice, and it helped birth a whole new way of government. Her story is really sad, but it also shows incredible strength and how deep pain can spark a revolution. Back then, Rome was ruled by kings. The last one, Tarquin the Proud, and his family were cruel. They used their power to hurt people. Lucretia was a respected noblewoman, known for her goodness and honor, but the king's son, Sextus Tarquinius, attacked her, deeply shaming her and her family. Instead of living with this terrible dishonor, Lucretia chose a path that would shake Rome to its core. She told her father and husband what had happened, and then, in front of them, she took her own life. This wasn't just a private tragedy. It was a public scream against the injustice and evil the royal family represented. Imagine if someone in your community, someone everyone respected, was deeply wronged and felt there was no way out but to make such a powerful, painful statement. It would make everyone stop. It would make them look at the problems differently. It would feel like a punch to the gut, forcing people to confront what was really going on. That's what happened in Rome. Her death became a rallying cry. Her relative, Brutus, held up the dagger she used and swore an oath to get rid of the kings forever. People were shocked, then furious. They saw Lucretia's death not just as her personal tragedy, but as a symbol of the king's tyranny affecting everyone. They marched, they protested, and they drove the kings out of Rome. And that's how the Roman Republic was born. It meant no more kings, but a government run by elected officials, chosen by the people. Lucretia's sacrifice, born from profound suffering, became the fire that burned away a cruel reign. It showed Rome, and us, that the dignity of people and the fight for justice can be so powerful it reshapes an entire nation. It reminds us that even when things are darkest, courage can still light the way to something better. Clolia, a young woman's daring escape. Have you ever felt a fear so big it makes your stomach drop, but then found a surprising strength inside you? That's the kind of moment we think about when we talk about Clolia. Imagine being a young person, and your city is at war. To make peace, your leaders offer you and other kids as hostages, a kind of living promise to the enemy. You haven't done anything wrong. You're just a symbol, a guarantee. That was Clodia's situation. She was a Roman girl given to Lars Porsena, a powerful general who was fighting Rome. But Clodia wasn't content to just wait. One day, she saw a chance for freedom. She led a group of other Roman girls from their camp. Together, they faced the wide, dangerous Tiber River. Can you imagine the cold water, the strong current pulling at them, the fear gripping their young hearts? But Clolia pushed on, swimming with incredible bravery, pulling and guiding the others to safety, not just for herself, but for everyone with her. When General Porsena learned of their daring escape, he was actually amazed by Clolia's spirit. He demanded she be returned, but when she did come back, he didn't punish her. Instead, he honored her courage. He even let her choose some of the hostages to go free. Clolia, showing her deep care for others, chose the youngest boys, knowing they were the most vulnerable and least able to protect themselves. Think about a time when you had to be brave for someone else, maybe a younger sibling or a friend, like when you stood up to a bully for someone smaller, even though you felt nervous. That's a bit like what Clolia did. She didn't just save herself, she led others to freedom. So Clolia's story reminds us that courage isn't always about fighting in a battle. Sometimes, it's a quiet, fierce determination to protect others, to face the impossible for what's right. It's about how one person's brave heart can truly inspire respect and change. Vestal virgins, guarding Rome's most sacred flame. Have you ever thought about what it would feel like to hold the safety of your entire world in your hands? To be responsible for something so precious, so ancient, that if it disappeared, everything would crumble. In ancient Rome, a select group of young women carried this immense weight. They were the Vestal Virgins, and their job was to guard Rome's most sacred flame. This wasn't just any fire. It burned in the temple of Vesta, the goddess of home and hearth. For Romans, this flame was the very heartbeat of their city, a symbol of Rome's survival and future. If it ever went out, people believed it meant disaster for the entire empire. So, these women, chosen as girls, committed 30 years of their lives to this singular, vital duty. For those decades, they couldn't marry or have families. Their lives were dedicated to the flame. To Rome. Here's the thing. While they gave up some personal freedoms, they also gained incredible power and respect. They lived in a special house, had front row seats at important events, and could even pardon criminals. Their purity and dedication were seen as essential for Rome's well-being. Think about a time you had to keep something super important, safe, maybe a pet, or a secret for a friend, or even just keeping your phone charged because you needed it for directions. That feeling of responsibility, of constant care. Now imagine that feeling, but multiplied by the fate of an entire empire. It's like being the one person who has to make sure the main power grid never fails, because everyone's counting on you for light and warmth. So, their lives weren't about fighting battles or giving grand speeches. Their power came from a quiet, unwavering devotion. They show us that sometimes, the most profound strength isn't loud or flashy. It's found in a steady, consistent care for something truly important. Their commitment, their unseen efforts, kept the flame burning, year after year, reminding Rome of its enduring spirit. It makes you think about how even simple, focused dedication can keep hope, or a whole city, alive. Rhea Silvia, the mother of Rome's mythical founders. Have you ever thought about how some stories, even really sad ones, can become the start of something truly amazing? We often hear about the great heroes of history, but sometimes, the people whose lives set those journeys in motion are just as important. Rhea Silvia is one of those women, and her story reminds us that even when life takes a really hard turn, the possibility for new beginnings can still spark. She was a princess, but her uncle, Amulius, cruelly took over her family's kingdom. To make sure Rhea Silvia couldn't have children who might challenge his rule, he forced her to become a Vestal Virgin. This meant she swore never to marry or have children. Imagine having your whole future, your dreams, your own choices, taken away from you like that. It's like when a big decision made by others completely changes your plans. But this was her entire life, stolen. But here's the thing about fate. It has a strange way of working. The god Mars, it is said, came to Rhea Silvia, and she bore twin sons, Romulus and Remus. This act, forbidden and incredibly dangerous, sealed her own very difficult fate. Her uncle, furious, ordered the baby twins to be drowned in the Tiber River, a terrible, desperate act. But they were saved, found and suckled by a she-wolf, and eventually grew up to found the mighty city of Rome. Rhea Silvia's life was full of injustice and sorrow. She was a mother who never got to raise her children, whose sacrifice was immense. Yet, without her, without that painful, difficult beginning, there would be no Romulus and Remus. there would be no legend of Rome's founding. It's like how sometimes a huge storm can clear out old, weak trees, making room for strong, new plants to grow. Her suffering was the clearing for Rome's future. Her story helps us see that even in the deepest despair, life finds a way to bloom. Sometimes, the biggest impact comes from the most unexpected, and often toughest, places. It shows how one person's challenging journey can create an entire world. Cornelius Supera, a doctor who cared for Rome's poor. Have you ever wondered what it was like to be sick in ancient Rome if you didn't have much money? Imagine feeling terrible, knowing no one would help you, or that you couldn't pay a doctor. It must have been terrifying, but even in a world that often overlooked its most vulnerable, there were truly special people. One was Cornelia. She was a doctor, but not just any doctor. She made it her life's work to care for Rome's poor. Think about it. Ancient Rome had big divisions. The rich had grand homes and access to the best everything. The poor often lived in cramped, dangerous places. Medical help was a luxury they couldn't afford. It was easy for them to feel forgotten, their struggles unseen. But Cornelia saw them. She chose to give her skills and heart to those society had pushed aside. This wasn't about fame or money for her. It was about pure compassion. Here's the thing. It's like seeing a classmate struggle with a tough problem in school. Everyone else walks past, but then one person stops, listens, and helps them figure it out. That one person makes a huge difference, not just to the grade, but to how that classmate feels. That's what Cornelia Supera did, but with people's health and lives. She didn't just offer medicine, she offered hope and dignity. Her work reminds us that true strength isn't always about power or wealth. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is simply care. Her name might not be as famous as an emperor's, but the kindness she showed, the lives she touched, and the suffering she eased left a mark deeper than any monument. She taught us that a single person, driven by a generous heart, can heal not just bodies, but the spirit of a community. It's a quiet legacy, but one that truly changed history for those who needed it most. Epicurus, a slave woman's brave plot against Nero. Have you ever thought about how much courage it takes to stand up to someone with absolute power, especially when that person could easily crush you? We often picture Roman emperors having total control, and people like slaves or freedwomen having no voice at all. But here's a story that completely flips that idea. It's about Epicurus, a former slave, who dared to act against one of Rome's most feared emperors, Nero. Nero was a famously cruel ruler, and many people were tired of his tyranny. A group of powerful Romans began to secretly plan to overthrow him, but even they were filled with fear. Epicurus, though, was not just afraid. She felt a deep need to act on the injustice she saw. She tried to get the Roman navy to join this secret plot, believing that if enough people came together, real change was possible. But here's the thing, she was betrayed, and the plot was discovered. Imagine trying to keep a huge secret, something that could change an empire or end your life if revealed. Now imagine someone finds out, and you are caught. Epicurus was arrested. The Romans knew she was part of the conspiracy. They subjected her to terrible torture, wanting desperately to know the names of the other people involved. Can you even begin to picture that kind of agony? It's like when you're playing a team game and have a secret strategy. If the other team catches you, they'll try everything to get you to spill. For Epicurus, the stakes were life and death, not just winning. She had every reason to give in, but Epicurus never did. She endured the suffering, day after day, keeping every name locked inside her heart. Not a single word of betrayal left her lips. She understood her silence was her final, most powerful act of defiance. She protected her friends and the hope for a better Rome, even as her body suffered. In the end, facing even more torture, she chose to take her own life rather than ever betray those who had trusted her. Her story is a quiet, yet incredibly powerful reminder that true strength isn't always found in armies or crowns. Sometimes, it's found in the unbreakable spirit of one person, a person who chooses courage over fear, loyalty over survival, and gives everything for a cause she deeply believes in. It shows us that even the most overlooked people can hold the greatest power in their hearts. Antonia Minor, a wise woman who saw the future. Have you ever had a feeling about something before it happened? Not like magic, but a deep sense, like you just knew what was coming. In ancient Rome, there was a woman named Antonia Minor who possessed this quiet power. She wasn't a fortune teller, but her wisdom was so deep, it was almost like she could see into the future. It wasn't magic. It was understanding the world and people in a rare way. Antonia lived through a time of plots, power struggles, and betrayals. She was a key figure, niece to Emperor Augustus and mother to the future Emperor Claudius. Imagine living where every decision, every word, could change history or end a life. Antonia moved through this complex world with clear sight. She understood people's true intentions, even when hidden. It was like she had a special lens for human nature, seeing past masks to their true selves. Think of a really good chess player. They don't just see the next move, they see many moves ahead. They understand the game and their opponents so well. Antonia did this with human hearts and political currents. She saw the ambition in some, the weakness in others. She understood the dangerous path her own grandson Caligula was heading down, even trying to guide him. This wasn't guessing. This came from careful observation, quiet listening, and a deep understanding of what makes people tick. She knew the weight of silent influence. Here's the thing. Sometimes, knowing what's coming can be a heavy burden. It means seeing potential pain or trouble and feeling like you can't always stop it. But her wisdom wasn't just about predicting. It was about understanding. It was about choosing how to act or when to stay silent. Her story reminds us that true wisdom isn't about grand acts. It's often found in the quiet parts of our minds, in how deeply we observe and truly listen. It's a gentle light, guiding us, and sometimes it lets us glimpse tomorrow. Poppaea Sabina, beauty, ambition, and an emperor's fall. Have you ever thought about how a person's sheer will, combined with a striking presence, can completely shift the course of history? How someone might reach for everything they desire, even if it means stepping over others. Poppaea Sabina was one such woman in ancient Rome, a figure whose story holds both dazzling ambition and deep sadness. She wasn't born into the highest imperial family, but she carried herself like royalty. Poppaea was famously beautiful, yes, but her real power came from her sharp mind and a burning ambition that set her apart. In a world where women often had limited direct power, Poppaea found a way to stand at the very center of it all. Her path crossed with Emperor Nero, a young ruler known for his wild moods and powerful passions. Poppaea entered his world, a place of grand feasts, whispers, and deadly political games. She used her charm, her quick wit, and a very strong, unyielding will to capture his full attention. This wasn't just about a pretty face. It was about understanding the emperor's mind, knowing how to influence decisions, and playing the most dangerous game in Rome. She wanted to be empress more than anything. This meant convincing Nero to cast aside his wife, Octavia, a woman the Roman people adored. It was a risky, even cruel, move. Think about how sometimes, when you badly want something, maybe a spot on a team or a lead role, you might be tempted to push others aside. That intense desire can be a powerful driver, but it can also make you do things you later regret, leaving a trail of hurt. Poppaea did become empress. She got the crown, the lavish lifestyle, and a strong hand in influencing Nero's reign. But her story reminds us that power, especially when gained through such fierce ambition, can be incredibly fragile. For all her cleverness and success, her life ended tragically and suddenly. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What is the true price of ambition? Is it worth everything, even if it brings pain to others or an uncertain fate to yourself? Poppaea's journey isn't just about a woman who reached the top. It's about the complex choices people make when desire takes over, and how, even at the peak of power, the human heart remains vulnerable, and life can truly change in a single, unexpected moment. Plottilla, a royal marriage and a tragic endeavor, dreamed of a grand wedding, full of joy. For some, like Plottilla in ancient Rome, that dream turned into a very different reality. Her father, Plotionus, was incredibly powerful, a top advisor to Emperor Septimius Severus. Plottilla soon became tangled in the dangerous web of imperial politics. Her marriage was to Caracalla, the emperor's son. This wasn't a choice made from love, but a political move to tie two powerful families. Imagine being told you have to marry someone, not because you care, but because it helps your dad's job. It must have felt like being a pawn on a giant chessboard, moved by hands much bigger than your own, with no say in your next step. Her life, which seemed grand, was really very fragile. Her father, Plotionus, grew too powerful, maybe too proud. He made enemies. The emperor saw him as a threat, and Plotionus was accused of trying to overthrow him. He was executed, his great power suddenly gone, and when her father fell, Plottilla fell too. though she had done nothing wrong. It's like when a giant tree crashes down, everything underneath gets crushed, no matter how small. She was stripped of her title, exiled far away, living in lonely fear for years. Caracalla eventually became emperor. He never liked her, and one of his first acts was to order her execution. Her story reminds us that even with all the wealth and status, true happiness and safety can be out of reach. Her life, so full of beginnings that promised much, ended in quiet despair. A heartbreaking example of how easily a person's fate can be controlled by others in a world of absolute power. Julia Domna, a Syrian empress who ruled. Smart. Have you ever wondered if the person in charge is truly the one making all the important decisions? Sometimes, real power isn't just about wearing a crown or sitting on a grand throne. Here's the thing. Sometimes it's about wisdom, about thinking ahead, and about a quiet, deep strength of mind. That's what Julia Domna helps us understand. She was born far away, in ancient Syria, but she rose to become empress, married to Emperor Septimius Severus. Her journey was not just a fairy tale. It was a testament to how intelligence can change everything. Julia Domna was far more than just an empress by marriage. She had a brilliant mind, a deep love for philosophy, and a passion for learning and art. You could think of her as a kind of intellectual powerhouse, right at the heart of the Roman Empire. While her husband, the emperor, was often away leading armies, Julia frequently stayed in Rome. She became the essential figure overseeing the government and influencing big decisions. She didn't just attend meetings, she gathered the smartest scholars and thinkers around her, almost creating a vibrant school of thought right inside the imperial palace. This was a time when women rarely held such open, visible power. Yet, she found incredibly smart ways to guide an entire empire, showing everyone that real leadership doesn't always mean being the one with the loudest voice or the highest official title. It's a bit like a school project. You might have a group leader, but there's often someone else in the group, maybe quieter, who comes up with all the best ideas. They research, they organize the facts, they make sure everything fits together perfectly. That person isn't the leader on paper, but their contributions are absolutely vital for a great outcome. Julia Domna was like that essential brain behind the scenes for Rome. She was the one thinking several moves ahead, quietly, but very effectively, shaping the future of an empire. Her life wasn't easy, not at all. She faced incredible struggles, including terrible family tragedies and constant political fights. But through every challenge, she held on to her amazing intellect and her clear sense of purpose. Her story reminds us that true strength often comes from deep inside us, from our ability to think, to learn, and to inspire others. Even when the world around us feels chaotic and overwhelming, it shows us how profoundly a sharp mind can truly change history, leaving behind a legacy not of simple conquest, but of intelligent, quiet, and lasting influence. Julia Misa, grandmothers who controlled emperors. Who controlled emperors? Have you ever wondered where real power truly comes from? Is it always the person in charge, the one everyone sees wearing the crown? Or can it be found in quieter places, in the steady, determined heart of someone standing just behind them? In ancient Rome, men held all the visible power. Emperors made laws, led armies, and decided the future. But sometimes, a woman, especially a grandmother, found ways to guide even the most powerful men. Julia Misa was one of these women. She didn't wear a crown herself, but she placed one on her grandson's head, and then another, quietly shaping the empire's destiny. Imagine a giant ship sailing across a vast ocean. The captain is at the wheel, steering. Everyone sees the captain. But what if someone in the engine room, or back in the shipyard, made sure the ship was built strong, chose the best crew, or whispered advice to the captain about the hidden currents? That's a bit like Julia Misa. She understood that a young emperor might be the face of power, but true influence could be woven through family ties, clever advice, and carefully planned moves. She saw her grandsons, Elagabalus and Severus Alexander, as her chance to restore her family's name. Her deep love for her family, combined with a fierce will to survive, made her incredibly strong. Think about how your own grandmother or a trusted older relative might guide you. They might not tell you exactly what to do, but their quiet suggestions, their wisdom from experience, or just their belief in you can shape your choices in big ways. They see a bigger picture because they've lived longer. Julia Misa used this kind of deep, quiet influence. She built support, managed public opinion, and sometimes made hard decisions to keep her family in power. Her story shows us that strength isn't always about shouting the loudest or fighting big battles. Sometimes, the most lasting power comes from a protective love and the quiet, steady hand that guides the future, generation after generation. It reminds us that even in a world built by men, a woman's will could move mountains. Julia Mamiya, the quiet hand guiding her son. Sometimes the strongest hands in history aren't the ones that hold the crown, but the ones that gently shape the person wearing it. Have you ever thought about that kind of power? It's not about shouting orders or being center stage. It's about a deep, steady influence. That's a bit like Julia Mamiya. She was the mother of Severus Alexander, who became the Roman emperor when he was just 14 years old. Can you imagine carrying the weight of an entire empire on your shoulders at that age? All those decisions, all that pressure, every day. It would be overwhelming. Here's the thing. Julia Mamiya stood right by her son, not as a ruler herself, but as his most trusted advisor. She was his confidant, his teacher, and his protector. She didn't make decisions for him, but she spent countless hours talking with him, helping him think through the big problems of the empire. She helped him understand how to choose good people for important jobs, how to manage the powerful Roman army, and how to treat all the diverse citizens under his rule. Think of it like this. Imagine you're learning to sail a big ship for the very first time. You're at the helm, holding the wheel, but your experienced captain is right there, whispering advice, pointing out hidden currents, showing you how to read the winds. You're the one steering, but their quiet guidance makes sure the ship stays on course and reaches its destination safely. Julia Mamiya offered this kind of vital, unseen guidance for an emperor. Her love for her son and her deep sense of duty to Rome fueled her every move. She wasn't seeking fame for herself. Instead, she was focused on helping him be a good, just emperor, someone who could bring peace and stability to a vast and often turbulent world. Her influence was a quiet, strong force, like the deep roots that support a mighty oak tree through many storms. This story shows us that true strength isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes, the most profound changes in history come from the patient work, the loving support, and the wise whispers of someone dedicated to helping another succeed. It's a powerful reminder that guiding hands, working behind the scenes, can truly shape the world. Faustina the Elder, an empress, remembered for good deeds. Have you ever thought about what makes someone truly unforgettable? Not just famous, but remembered with real warmth, even centuries later. Here's the thing about Faustina the Elder. She was an empress of Rome, holding immense power. But what truly set her apart wasn't just her crown. It was the kindness in her heart. She was the beloved wife of Emperor Antoninus Pius. Their reign was known for peace. Faustina herself earned a special legacy through her deep compassion. She didn't just live in a grand palace. Instead, she used her important position to help those who needed it most. Think about children who lost parents, or families struggling for food. Faustina saw these problems, and she acted. She created programs, like the Puleo Faustiniane, the Girls of Faustina, offering support and a future for orphaned girls. This was a profound way of saying, you matter, your future deserves hope. Imagine you're at a new school, feeling lost or scared. Someone offers a genuine smile, helps you find your classroom, or invites you to sit with them. That small act of kindness can totally change your day, right? It can even shift your whole perspective. That's a bit like what Faustina did, but on a much bigger scale. Her caring actions spread like gentle ripples, touching many lives and leaving a lasting, good impression. Many rulers are remembered for wars or huge buildings, but Faustina reminds us of a different kind of strength. Her story teaches us that true power, the kind that echoes through centuries, often comes from compassion. It's about choosing to use your influence to lift others up, to make their world brighter. Her memory isn't just history, it's a timeless idea. Good deeds never truly fade. They live on, inspiring us to be more caring, even today. Faustina the Younger, facing gossip and standing strong. Have you ever felt like someone was talking about you, spreading things that weren't true? Maybe whispers in the hallway, or rumors online. Words can feel like small, sharp stones sometimes, hurting even when you know they're not true. This isn't a new feeling. People have dealt with gossip for thousands of years, and Faustina the Younger, a powerful empress of ancient Rome, knew this feeling deeply. Faustina was the wife of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a man known for his wisdom and calmness, but her life was full of drama, not from her actions, but from the words of others. People spread wild rumors about her, things that were often cruel and unfair. She was accused of all sorts of misdeeds, things that could destroy a woman's reputation and standing in Roman society. It's a bit like when a false story about someone gets shared on social media, going viral before anyone can check the facts. It spreads so fast, and suddenly, what people believe feels more real than the actual truth. For Faustina, these rumors were constant, a shadow over her life, trying to dim her light. But here's the thing, Faustina stood strong. She didn't let the noise define her. Her husband, Marcus Aurelius, was a follower of Stoicism, a way of thinking that teaches you to focus on what you can control, your actions, your thoughts, your character, and not on what you can't, like other people's opinions or lies. Faustina seemed to embody this spirit. She knew her own truth, so what can we learn from her? It's that your inner strength, your understanding of who you truly are, is more powerful than any gossip. It means standing tall, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise, and trusting in your own good heart, no matter what whispers fill the air. That quiet, knowing strength is a kind of power all its own. Marcia, a slave who caught an emperor's eye. Have you ever felt like someone only saw one small part of who you are? Imagine that feeling, but much bigger. Imagine your life not truly your own, a possession. In ancient Rome, this was the harsh reality for countless people. Slavery, it meant being a tool, not always seen as a full person. Yet, even in such a rigid world, human stories could break through. This is one about Marcia. She was a slave, yet she caught the attention of Emperor Commodus, one of Rome's most powerful men. Think about that. Her daily life was controlled, hard. Her future wasn't hers, but there must have been something about her, her spirit, her intelligence, her quiet strength that broke through layers of status and power. She became his chamberlain, a trusted attendant. This was a surprising position for her background. It meant she was close to him, maybe even spoke her mind. It reminds us that even when society puts people in boxes, a person's true self can escape. It's like when you meet someone new. Maybe they seem quiet in class, but then you talk and find they have an amazing talent or a passion nobody expected. You see past the first impression to the real person underneath. Marcia, in a way, did that for an emperor. She wasn't just the slave, she became Marcia, a woman with presence, a voice. Her story makes you wonder about hidden depths in everyone and unexpected connections. It shows that even in dark history, where freedom was denied, the human spirit could shine bright enough to be seen. Her story matters. It reminds us every person, no matter their circumstances, holds a unique and powerful essence. Eudocia, a poet and empress who loved learning. Imagine this, you have a really important job, and everyone looks to you for big decisions. But what if your heart's true joy wasn't in power, but in books, in stories, in learning? This was you. She became an empress, but at her core, she was always a poet and a scholar. Her life didn't start that way. She was born Athenae, the daughter of a philosophy professor in Athens. He taught her so much, filling her mind with knowledge, poetry, and old ideas. Here's the thing, for a woman back then, being so educated was super rare. Her mind was like a special garden she tended, growing thoughts and verses. Then, life changed everything. She traveled to the big city, Constantinople, and met Emperor Theodosius II. She became Empress Eudocia. Just like that, a smart student became an empress. But even with all the new duties, her love for learning never faded. Think about when you're completely lost in a great book, or absorbed in a new skill. That pure focus and joy. That's how Eudocia felt about knowledge. She didn't just rule, she wrote poems, translated ancient texts, and helped new schools. It's like she wore two crowns, one for her empire, and an invisible one made of wisdom and words. Her mind was a safe place, where she could still be Athenae, the quiet scholar, even while being a powerful empress. And that's why her story matters. It shows us our real strength isn't just what we do, but who we are inside. It's about what we care about, and what we choose to learn. Eudocia proved that even on a throne, the best treasure is found in the quiet, endless world of books. Her legacy isn't just about ruling, but about the lasting beauty of a mind that loved to learn. Marcella, the strong sister of Augustus. Have you ever thought about the people who quietly hold things together, even when someone else is in the spotlight? Marcella the Elder was one of those remarkable Roman women. She was the older sister of Augustus, who became Rome's first great emperor. while her brother commanded legions and built an empire. Marcella's life tells a story of a different, but equally important, kind of power. In ancient Rome, especially for women in very powerful families, life was often about duty and the good of the state. Your personal feelings, your own wishes, often took a back seat. Imagine being a young woman whose marriages were arranged not for love, but to make powerful political alliances. Marcella married important men, not just once, but multiple times. Each marriage was a strategic move by her brother to strengthen his position and bring peace to Rome after years of civil war. Can you picture that? Having such huge decisions about your life made for you, all for a bigger purpose. It truly took a special kind of strength and endurance. Here's the thing, it wasn't easy. Think about a sturdy bridge. Everyone notices the cars driving across it, the people walking by, but the real strength is hidden beneath, in the deep foundations and the strong cables that keep it from falling apart. Marcella was a bit like those unseen foundations for her brother. She endured personal hardships. She faced the sadness of losing children, and her alliances sometimes shifted, leading to new marriages. But through it all, she stayed incredibly loyal and maintained her dignity. She helped raise a large family, including children from different parts of her complicated life, providing stability in a world that was constantly changing and often violent. Her power wasn't about public speeches or leading an army. It was a quieter, much deeper strength. It was the power of fierce loyalty, of making sacrifices for her family and for Rome, and of facing hardship with a steady heart. Marcella reminds us that true impact isn't always loud or about being in charge. Sometimes, the most powerful acts are those of quiet endurance, of supporting others, and of standing firm through life's biggest challenges. She shows us that holding things together, even when it's hard, is a profound and lasting kind of strength. Servilia, mother of Brutus, a Stoic Roman matron. Have you ever felt like you had to be really strong, even when your heart was breaking? Imagine needing to stay calm and collected, even if your whole world felt upside down. That's a bit like the life of Servilia, a woman from ancient Rome. She was the mother of Brutus, a name many of you might know from the dramatic story of Julius Caesar. But Servilia herself was a truly remarkable person, known for her incredible inner peace and strength. Romans called this Stoicism, and she embodied it. Here's the thing about Stoicism. It wasn't about pretending you didn't feel sad or angry. It was about understanding that, while you can't always control the bad things that happen, you can control how you react. Servilia lived through some of the most dangerous and dramatic times Rome ever saw. Her life was deeply connected to powerful men, including Julius Caesar, who many believed she loved. And then, the unimaginable happened. Her own son Brutus became a main leader in the plot to kill Caesar. Think about that for a moment. How do you even begin to process such a thing? It's like when you're playing a game and something goes totally wrong, like a bad call or a missed shot. You can get super mad and let it mess up your whole game, or you can take a deep breath, focus, and keep playing your best. Servilia faced a situation far harder than any game. She had to navigate a world where her son had killed someone she cared for deeply. Yet, through all the whispers and the danger, she didn't fall apart publicly. She showed an amazing, quiet power, carrying immense sorrow and complex feelings without letting them take over. She found strength in her mind, choosing how she would stand tall even when her heart ached. Her story isn't just about political drama or famous people. It's about a mother who had to endure profound personal tragedy and do it with grace. Her quiet resilience teaches us that sometimes the biggest power isn't about yelling or fighting. It comes from deep inside, from how you hold yourself together, from the steady heart you find, even when everything around you feels like a storm. Servilia reminds us that true strength often means finding calm within yourself, no matter how chaotic the world outside gets. Constantia, an empress in a changing world. Have you ever felt like you were standing on a bridge, with one foot in the past and one stepping into a completely new future? That's a little like Constantia's life. She was the daughter of Constantine the Great, a man who changed the Roman world forever. But here's the thing. Constantia didn't just watch. She lived right in the middle of this massive shift. Imagine the Roman Empire, a place that had worshipped many different gods for hundreds of years. Suddenly, a powerful new idea, Christianity, was growing stronger every day. Her father, Emperor Constantine, embraced this new faith. He saw a different path for Rome. But her husband, Licinius, held on to the old ways. the traditions that had shaped the empire for so long. So Constantia was caught between two incredibly powerful men, two very different worlds, two distinct beliefs, clashing right in her own family. It's like being in a family where one parent wants to move to a brand new city, start completely fresh, and the other absolutely loves the old town and wants to stay no matter what. How do you stand firm when everything around you is shaking, when the people you love are on opposite sides of something so big? Constantia tried to be a peacemaker, even when it seemed impossible to bridge the divide. She carried the weight of her family's legacy and the future of an empire on her shoulders. Her quiet strength reminds us that sometimes the most profound changes happen not on battlefields, but in the difficult personal choices people make inside their hearts and homes. It shows us that even when the world feels like it's spinning too fast, we can still find our own way to navigate, to adapt, and to leave our mark. Not always with grand gestures, but with quiet, steady resilience. Flavia Julia Constatia, a queen's quiet power. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the quietest person in a room can hold the most strength? Not the one who shouts or demands attention, but the one who just is, steady, thoughtful, and deeply present. That kind of quiet power is a rare and precious thing, and Flavia Julia Constantia knew it well. Her life wasn't filled with loud battles or grand speeches. Instead, she navigated a world of emperors and alliances with a different kind of might, the strength of her spirit. Constantia was the half-sister of Constantine the Great, one of Rome's most famous emperors. She was married off to another powerful man, Licinius, to help create peace between them. Imagine being a chess piece in a giant game of power, your life arranged for reasons bigger than yourself. But Constantia wasn't just a piece, she had a heart that felt deeply. When the peace broke, and her husband Licinius was defeated by her brother, she stood up. She pleaded for Licinius's life, showing immense courage in a dangerous time. Her influence wasn't about issuing commands, it was about connection and quiet persuasion. Like how a single, steady root deep beneath the ground can hold a massive tree against a fierce storm. You don't see the root, but its silent power is everything. Constantia often worked behind the scenes, her presence a soft reminder of shared family, of humanity. Even in the harshest political climates, she endured great personal sorrow, losing her husband and then her son. But she did so with a quiet dignity. Her life teaches us that strength isn't always loud or obvious. It's often found in the quiet moments, in holding on to compassion, in the courage to speak for what's right, and in the sheer ability to keep going even when your world feels like it's falling apart. Sometimes, the most profound changes begin not with a roar, but with a whisper, carried by a soul that refuses to be silenced by circumstances. Livia Orestilla, briefly an empress, always a mystery. Have you ever thought about how some people just flicker into a story, only to vanish, leaving you to wonder what their full life was about? Ancient Rome, with all its drama, is full of such moments, especially for women whose lives were often overshadowed. Here's one of those deep mysteries. Livia, for just a few incredibly short days, she was an empress. Then, just as quickly, she was gone, leaving behind only a whisper of her name and so many questions. Think about what that must have been like. Imagine one day your world is completely turned upside down by someone powerful, without any warning. That's a little like what happened to Livia. In ancient Rome, emperors held absolute power. Marriages were often decided not by love, but by politics. Livia Orestilla was already married to a Roman senator. But then, the unpredictable emperor Caligula saw her, and here's what happened. He decided he wanted her. On the very same day, he forced her husband to divorce her, and then, he married Livia himself. Can you even begin to imagine the shock and fear? One moment, you're living your life. The next, you're suddenly the empress, married to the most powerful and feared man in the world. But here's the problem, and where the real mystery begins. Caligula reportedly divorced her the very next day, and almost immediately, he banished her from Rome. Just like that, she was erased from public life. Poof, gone. She became barely a footnote in the grand, sweeping story of a powerful emperor. It's a bit like finding an old, faded photograph. There's a clear face in the background, but no one remembers who they were or what their story truly was. There are images there, but their life's narrative is simply lost to time. What did she feel in those few intense days? Was she terrified, confused, perhaps, deep down, even a little relieved by her banishment? We will likely never know. Her brief appearance reminds us how delicate a person's place in society could be, especially for a woman when powerful men controlled everything. Sometimes, the most profound emotions and biggest lessons are found in the silence. In the story's history never fully answers, Livia or Astilla's puzzling moment tells us so much about the absolute power of emperors and the quiet struggles of those caught in their shadow. It makes you wonder about all the other untold stories out there, just waiting for someone to think about them. Domitia Longina, an emperor's wife, and her scandals. Have you ever thought about how some people in history get remembered only for their problems or bad stories? It's like a whisper game, where the truth gets twisted. Domitia Longina was an empress, married to one of Rome's most feared emperors. Imagine being married to someone so powerful that his mood could change everything, not just for you, but for an entire empire. That was her life. Domitia lived in a world where being a powerful woman meant being watched by everyone. Every choice she made, every person she spoke to, could be twisted into a scandal. When her husband, Domitian, became more suspicious and cruel, her life grew incredibly difficult. The ancient writers tell us stories about her having affairs, even hinting at secret children. But here's the thing, these stories often came from people who hated Domitian and wanted to make his whole family look bad. It's like how sometimes in school, if one person is unpopular, rumors might spread about their friends or family too. Just to make things worse, Domitia was accused of cheating on the emperor, which was a huge deal back then, especially for an empress. Because of these accusations, Domitian divorced her for a time, even killing one of the men she was supposedly involved with. Think about how confusing and scary that must have been, to lose your status, your home, your safety, all because of rumors, some of which might have been true, but many, perhaps, just cruel gossip. We can never truly know her side of the story, can we? The records are mostly from men who saw her through lenses of power and suspicion. So, when we look back at Domitia Longina, it's easy to focus on the scandals. But maybe, just maybe, we should also think about the immense pressure she faced. It's a reminder that history isn't always fair. Sometimes, the most powerful people are also the most trapped, their lives written by others. It teaches us to be a little more thoughtful, a little more kind about the stories we hear, and the people those stories are about. Plotina, a kind empress who made a difference. Have you ever thought about what it means for someone with great power to also have a truly kind heart? In the grand, often harsh world of ancient Rome, empresses were usually seen as symbols of status, or sometimes figures in political games. But then there was Plotina, a woman who broke that mold. She was empress, married to Emperor Trajan, but her legacy isn't about lavish parties or grand conquests. It's about compassion. Plotina understood that true power isn't about control, but about care. She saw the everyday struggles of ordinary people, not just the elite. This was rare, because back then, many rulers were focused on expanding their empires or building monuments to themselves. Plotina, though, wanted to build a better life for those who needed it most. She pushed for laws that were fairer, especially for women and the poor, ensuring they had more rights and opportunities. She believed in justice for everyone, not just a select few. Think of it this way. Imagine your school's principal. If they only paid attention to the star athletes or the highest achieving students and ignored everyone else, how would that feel? But what if your principal worked hard to make sure every student had a fair chance, that the rules were just, and that help was available for those struggling? Plotina acted like that principal, but for an entire empire. She made sure poor children could get an education and helped create systems where people could borrow money without unfair rates, easing the burdens on families. Her quiet strength and deep empathy didn't just stay within the palace walls. It rippled out, influencing her husband and even his successor, Hadrian. Her actions showed that leadership doesn't have to be cold or distant. It can be warm, understanding, and focused on making life genuinely better for others. Her story reminds us that kindness, when paired with power, isn't a weakness. It's a profound force for good, capable of changing the course of history by simply choosing to care. Sabina, an empress who traveled with Rome. Have you ever thought about what home truly means? Is it just a building, or a city, or is it something you carry inside you? For Empress Sabina, the wife of Emperor Hadrian, home was often wherever she stood. Unlike many empresses who stayed safely in Rome, Sabina was constantly on the move. She traveled the vast Roman Empire with Hadrian, seeing everything from the misty shores of Britain to the sunny sands of Egypt. Imagine that, An empress, always journeying, not just visiting as a tourist, but living, learning, and representing Rome in countless faraway places. We call her an empress who traveled with Rome because she didn't just visit new lands. She brought Rome with her. She embodied its power, its culture, its presence, like a living piece of the capital carried across mountains and seas. Her role was significant, showing the empire's reach and its empress's dedication. It wasn't always easy, being away from the familiar, but it made her a unique figure. Think about a school sports team traveling for an away game. They aren't in their home gym or on their home field, but they bring their team spirit, their coach, their shared strategy. The team isn't just a place, it's the people, their purpose, their shared history. Sabina was like that for Rome. She carried its identity, its expectations, its very heart, everywhere she went. It makes you think, doesn't it? How strong must she have been to adapt to so many different cultures, to face the challenges of constant travel, all while maintaining the dignity of an empress? Her life whispers a powerful question. Can we too carry our truest selves, our values, our home, wherever we go? Maybe Sabina shows us that our roots aren't just in the ground, but also within our hearts, guiding us, making us feel connected even when the landscape changes completely. Julia Priscilla, a wise mother of 2 emperors. Have you ever thought about the hardest job in the world? Maybe it's not being a general or even an emperor. Sometimes, the heaviest burden belongs to a mother, especially when her children hold immense power. Julia Priscilla lived in ancient Rome, a time of grand ambitions and dangerous rivalries. She was the mother of 2 young men, Caracalla and Geta. Both were destined to be emperors, to share the throne of Rome. Can you imagine the pride, but also the deep, quiet fear she must have felt? Julia was known for her incredible wisdom, her calm strength, and a heart full of love. She tried so hard to guide her sons, to teach them compromise, to show them how to rule a vast empire together. Her days were spent whispering counsel, urging peace, always hoping their brotherly bond would win out over the tempting call of absolute power. She wasn't just a queen, she was a tireless guardian, a voice of reason in a world that often valued might over mercy. Here's the thing, even the wisest words and the strongest love can sometimes not be enough against the pull of power and jealousy. Think of it like this: if you have 2 magnets, they can attract each other, but they can also push away with incredible force. Caracalla and Geta were like that, but with armies and empires at their command. Julia was constantly trying to bridge the growing gap between them, to remind them of their shared childhood, to protect them from themselves. It was an endless, heartbreaking task, like trying to hold back a storm with just your hands. Her love was an anchor, constantly trying to pull them back to safety, but the currents of ambition were too strong, too fierce. What does it mean to be wise, to be loving, and still watch things fall apart? Julia Priscilla's story shows us that even with all the wisdom in the world, some fates are just too big to change. But it also shows us the powerful, enduring spirit of a mother who never gave up, even when her heart was breaking. Her quiet struggle reminds us that true strength isn't always about winning battles. It's about how deeply you care, how bravely you try, and how much love you pour into the world, even when it feels like it's tearing itself apart. It's about holding on to hope, even when all seems lost. Agrippina the Elder, a mother's strength against an emperor. Have you ever felt so strongly about protecting someone you love that you'd face anything, even something truly terrifying? Imagine standing up to the most powerful person in the world, just to keep your children safe. That's the story of Agrippina the Elder, a woman whose courage shone brightly in the Roman Empire's shadows. She was not an ordinary woman. She was the granddaughter of Emperor Augustus, wife of a beloved general, and mother to future leaders. But even with all that, life in the imperial family was very dangerous. Power was everything, and people would do terrible things to get or keep it. After her husband died, Agrippina believed he was poisoned. She saw threats everywhere, especially to her children, who were next in line for the throne. The emperor, Tiberius, was a suspicious and cruel man. He saw Agrippina and her children as rivals. Here's the thing, most people would have stayed quiet. They would have hidden, afraid of the emperor's anger, but Agrippina wouldn't. Her love for her children was like a shield and a sword. It gave her courage to speak out, to demand justice, and to fight for their future, even when it meant defying the emperor. Think of it like this. When a mama bear protects her cubs, she doesn't care how big or scary the threat is. Her instinct is simply to protect. Agrippina was like that, using her strong will and sharp words instead of claws. She faced exile and prison, not for a crime, but for daring to protect her family from an emperor who felt threatened. Her story reminds us that real strength often comes from the deepest parts of our hearts. It's not always about winning a battle, but about the courage to stand up for what's right, especially when it's hard, and especially for those you cherish. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the world is a mother's unwavering love. Crispina, an empress who fell victim to court intrigue, imagine standing at the very top, an empress with seemingly everything, and then having it all ripped away by whispers, rumors, and the cruel games people play for power. That's a bit like what happened to Crispina, an empress of Rome, whose life became a tragic story of court intrigue. Here's the thing, court intrigue sounds fancy, but it just means sneaky plots and secret plans made by people close to the powerful, often to gain an advantage or to hurt someone else. It's like when you hear gossip in the school hallway, but instead of just hurt feelings, the stakes are someone's life or freedom. Crispina was married to Emperor Commodus, a man who, unfortunately, became more interested in gladiatorial games than governing. While he was distracted, the imperial court was a dangerous place. People were constantly trying to get closer to power, to gain influence, or to eliminate rivals. Crispina, perhaps too innocent or simply caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, became a target. The details are a bit murky, but essentially, she was accused of terrible things, false accusations like adultery, designed to make her look bad and lose her standing. It was a setup, a cruel trap woven by those who wanted her gone, likely fueled by jealousy or a desire to control the emperor himself. Think about a time when a group of friends turned against one person, spreading lies, just because one of them felt threatened or wanted more attention. That kind of betrayal, that quiet turning of people against you, can be incredibly painful. For Crispina, this wasn't just about losing friends, it meant losing her position, her freedom, and eventually, her life. She was exiled to a remote island, stripped of her imperial title, and later executed. Her story reminds us how easily a person can be brought down by the ambition and ruthlessness of others, even when they've done nothing truly wrong. It's a harsh lesson about how power can corrupt, and how important it is to be aware of the shadows lurking even in the brightest places. Galleria Valeria, a Roman empress facing persecution. Have you ever felt like the rules suddenly changed, and you were left vulnerable for no good reason? Imagine feeling completely safe, even powerful, and then in a heartbeat, everything shifts, and you're suddenly the one being hunted. That's a glimpse into the life of Galleria Valeria, a Roman empress, whose story reminds us how quickly fortunes can turn. She was born into immense power, the daughter of Emperor Diocletian, and later married Emperor Galerius. She lived in magnificent palaces, surrounded by loyalty and luxury. She was, by all accounts, an empress who used her position for good, even showing kindness to persecuted Christians at a time when many did not. But here's the harsh truth about power, especially in ancient Rome. It's a swirling, unpredictable current. When her husband Galerius died, the political landscape shattered. The emperors who came after saw her not as a good woman, but as a symbol of the old regime. Her adopted son, Maximinus Dia, was meant to protect her. Instead, he turned on her with bitter hatred. It wasn't about anything she had done wrong personally. It was about raw power and erasing anyone connected to the past. Think about a small, innocent animal caught in a huge forest fire. It wasn't the animal's fault, but the world around it became terrifying and dangerous, forcing it to run and hide just to survive. That's a bit how Galleria Valeria's life became. She was stripped of her wealth, her status, and her protection. She had to flee, disguise herself, and wander across the empire as a fugitive, always looking over her shoulder, knowing that death waited for her. Her journey, filled with fear and betrayal, is a quiet, powerful echo through time. It reminds us that even at the highest levels of society, personal safety is never guaranteed. It shows us how quickly kindness can be forgotten, and how easily innocent people can become targets when power changes hands. Her story is a testament to the surprising cruelty that can emerge, and the quiet strength it takes to simply survive when the world decides it wants you gone. Flavia, Maximiana, Theodora, a stepmother's influence. Have you ever thought about how some people, even if they aren't your birth family, can still shape who you become? It's a powerful idea, and it happened all the time in ancient Rome. just like it does today. Flavia Maximiana Theodora was one of these women. She was a stepmother, but her impact reached far beyond just her immediate household. Here's the thing. In Rome, family wasn't just about love. It was about power, connections, and the future of an empire. Theodora was the stepdaughter of a powerful emperor, Maximian, and she married Constantius Cleros, who would also become an emperor. This meant she was at the very heart of Rome's ruling class. She had children with Constantius, and she also became stepmother to his son from another marriage, a son named Constantine, who would eventually become one of the most famous Roman emperors in history. Imagine for a moment, think about a time when someone who wasn't your parent, maybe a teacher, a coach, or an older cousin, gave you advice that really stuck with you. They didn't tell you what to do, but their words helped you see things differently, or encouraged you to try harder. That quiet guidance, that steady presence, can feel like a hand gently steering your path, even if you don't realize it until much later. Theodora's influence, while not always recorded in grand speeches, worked in similar ways. She was a constant figure in the complex, high-stakes world where young Constantine grew up. Her presence, her actions, the family structure she helped maintain, these things quietly contributed to the environment that shaped a future leader. It reminds us that history isn't just made by emperors or famous generals. It's also shaped by the everyday relationships, by the strong women in families who nurture, guide, and support. Sometimes, the most important impacts come from those who, from the side, offer a steady hand, building a foundation for greatness. It's a quiet power, but its echoes can last for centuries. Serena, the Empress's niece who held great power, have you ever thought about how much influence a family member can have, especially if they're close to someone really powerful? In ancient Rome, Serena was one of those people. She wasn't an empress herself, but she was the niece of Emperor Theodosius. I imagine having the most important person in the world as your uncle. That's big. But here's the thing. Her connection wasn't just about family dinners. She married Stilicho, one of the most powerful generals in the entire Roman Empire. So, she was related to the emperor and married to the top military man. That gave her an incredible amount of say in things. Even if she wasn't officially ruling, in those days, women rarely held official power. They couldn't be senators or generals, but women like Serena found ways to shape events from behind the scenes. She advised her husband, likely influenced decisions, and certainly had a lot of social sway. Her choices could literally affect the lives of thousands. Think about it like this. Maybe your friend's older brother is the captain of the football team, or their mum is the school principal. They don't have the job of captain or principal, but they might know things early, or their words might carry a little extra weight because of who they're connected to. Serena's situation was like that, but on a grander, empire-shaking scale. Her life shows us how family ties, when mixed with enormous power, can create a silent force. She stood at the very heart of the empire, witnessing history unfold, sometimes even guiding its path. But that kind of closeness to power also comes with a heavy burden. When the empire faced its darkest hours, Serena, despite her high position, became a target. Her connections, once her strength, became a source of danger. Her story makes you wonder about the true nature of power. Is it only about the crown you wear, or the army you command? Or can it also be a quiet whisper in a powerful ear, a trusted voice that influences decisions that change the world? Serena's life teaches us that influence isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a delicate, powerful web woven in the shadows of greatness. Pulcheria, a young empress who ruled with wisdom. Can you imagine the weight of an empire on your shoulders as a teenager? Picture being just 15, still figuring things out, but suddenly in charge of millions of lives. This was Pulcheria's reality, a Roman empress who stepped into immense power, so young. Her story shows us the quiet strength it takes to lead wisely, even when the world expects failure. Pulcheria wasn't just any young woman. She was the older sister to a very young emperor. Her brother was too young, so Pulcheria became Augusta, a great honor. For decades, she guided the Eastern Roman Empire. Back then, most believed only older men could govern, but Pulcheria showed them something new. She faced tough problems making laws, shaping religious ideas, protecting her lands from threats. She didn't have years of training. She had a sharp mind, strong will, and a deep sense of responsibility for every choice. Think about leading a group project. Maybe you weren't the oldest or the loudest, but you listened to everyone, thought through the ideas, and made a clear choice that helped the team succeed. That's a small echo of Pulcheria's work. Her project impacted countless families and shaped history. Her smart choices brought stability and respect to her empire, not through shouting, but through quiet, thoughtful leadership that came from within. Her life reminds us that true wisdom isn't just about how many years you've lived. It's about clear vision, quiet courage for hard choices, and strong dedication to what's right, no matter your age. Pulcheria's story whispers a simple truth. The strongest leaders often listen, think deeply, and act with a steady, kind hand. It proves inner wisdom can change the world. Euphemia, an empress who shaped a city. Have you ever thought about how one person, just one, can leave a mark so deep it changes an entire city? Not with wars or grand conquests, but with something quieter, yet incredibly powerful. Here's the thing. Sometimes, the most lasting changes come from a leader's heart, not just their crown. This is the story of Euphemia, an empress who truly shaped a city. Her real name was Lupicina, a simple name for a simple woman, before she met Emperor Mark. When he chose her, she was given a new name, Euphemia. It means well-spoken, or of good repute. This new name wasn't just a label, it was a promise, a hope for the future, and she lived up to it. Euphemia became empress of the Byzantine Empire, and her influence was huge. She wasn't just someone sitting on a throne. She was active. She used her position to fund churches, hospitals, and homes for people who needed help. Think about it like this. Imagine your school. If the principal decides to make sure the school garden is beautiful and that there are always free books for students, it changes the feel of the place. It shows care. Euphemia did that for a whole city. For Constantinople, she helped build its physical structures, yes, but also its spirit. She brought a sense of stability and goodness during a time that could have been very uncertain. And that's why it matters. Her actions showed what she valued. She understood that a city isn't just buildings, it's the people in it, and how they live and feel. Her quiet strength and thoughtful choices became part of the city's very identity. She showed that true power isn't just about ruling, but about nurturing. Our choices, even the small ones, can build something lasting, something that whispers kindness through the generations, shaping the world long after we are gone. Alea Eudoxia, a powerful empress in a new era. Have you ever felt like your voice wasn't heard, or that big decisions were made without you, even when they affected your life deeply? Imagine that feeling, but multiplied by 1,000, in an ancient empire that was changing every single day. That was the world Alea Eudoxia stepped into. She wasn't just another empress. She lived when the mighty Roman Empire was splitting apart, almost like the ground beneath its feet was moving. Western Rome was struggling, and the Christian church was growing stronger, challenging old traditions, old ways of thinking. For a woman, especially, to truly wield power and shape events back then was nothing short of astonishing, even brave. Alea Eudoxia arrived on this complicated stage, marrying Emperor But here's the thing, she didn't just sit prettily on the sidelines. She understood that power wasn't only about armies or laws. It was also about influence, about who listened to you, and what ideas you could spread. Think of it like a quiet student who, instead of shouting, carefully builds a fantastic project or writes an amazing story that everyone talks about. They gain respect and influence not by force, but by the thoughtful strength of their work and ideas, by making others see things differently. That's a bit like Alea. She used her position to shape opinions, to challenge powerful church leaders, and even to help make important laws. She was bold, unafraid to speak up, even when it meant facing down powerful men who believed women should remain silent and just follow orders. This wasn't easy, and it surely brought lonely battles. Her story isn't just about ancient politics. It's a powerful reminder that even when things seem set in stone, or when you feel like a small piece in a massive puzzle, your actions can still create ripples, changing the current. It shows us that true strength isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's the quiet, deep determination to stand firm in your beliefs, to use your position, however small or grand, to make a difference. It's about choosing to leave your mark, not just by being remembered, but by the lasting change you inspire, a change that can echo through history and touch lives centuries later. Placidia, a princess who survived Rome's fall. Have you ever wondered what it's like when your whole world changes? Not just a little, but completely. Imagine growing up in a place that feels like it will last forever, only to see it crumbling around you. That's a bit like the story of Galla Placidia, a Roman princess born into a life of power and wealth. But her life wasn't a fairy tale. Instead, it was a constant journey through chaos. Right at the time the mighty Roman Empire was collapsing. Think about it. Rome had been around for over 1,000 years. It was the center of everything. And then, slowly, and sometimes very suddenly, it started to fall apart. For Placidia, this wasn't just history in books. It was her everyday life. She was kidnapped by Visigoths, a powerful group often called barbarians, and eventually married their king. She lived through sieges, famine, and the destruction of the very city she called home. It would be like if your whole town, your school, everything you knew, suddenly vanished or was taken over by a new culture, and you had to find a way to live within that new reality. It's hard to even picture that kind of change. But Placidia didn't just survive, she adapted. She learned to navigate these new worlds, sometimes as a hostage, sometimes as a queen, and eventually as an empress. She had to be smart and strong, making hard choices just to keep herself and her children safe. She saw the old ways disappear, but she also helped build some of the new ones. It's like when you have a big plan for a project, and then everything goes wrong. But instead of giving up, you find a different, unexpected way to finish it, maybe even better than before. Her story shows us that even when big structures fall, people can find a way. Placidia reminds us that even in the most broken times, there are people who stand firm, who find a path forward, and who, against all odds, keep shaping what comes next. Her life wasn't about ruling an empire, but about enduring its end, and showing how courage can shine even in the darkest hours of change. Justina, an empress who fought for her beliefs. Have you ever felt deep down that something was right? Truly right, even when everyone else seemed to think differently? It's a powerful, sometimes scary, feeling. For Empress Justina, this wasn't just a feeling, it was her life. She lived in a time when the Roman Empire was changing, and different ideas about Christianity were clashing. Justina was an empress, and her young son Valentinian II was just a boy when he became emperor. In the city of Milan, there was a very strong and popular bishop named Ambrose. He followed a type of Christianity called Nicene. Justina, however, believed in Arian Christianity, which was a different way of understanding God. Here's the thing. Bishop Ambrose wanted all the churches in Milan to follow his Nicene beliefs. He even demanded that Justina give up some churches for his followers. But Justina refused. Imagine someone trying to tell you that the way you understand your favorite story, or the rules of your favorite game, is wrong, and you must change it. And not just for fun, but for something that means everything to you, your deepest faith. That's what it was like for Justina. She stood firm, not just for power, but for her beliefs, for her family's spiritual freedom. She saw it as protecting her son's right to worship as they chose. It took incredible courage. She faced angry crowds and a powerful bishop. She was an empress, yes, but also a mother, fighting for what she believed was true and sacred. Her fight shows us something important. It's not always about winning or losing in a big, public way. Sometimes, the real victory is holding on to what feels true to you inside, even when the world pushes hard against you. It's about understanding what you believe, and finding the strength to stand by it, no matter how lonely that stand might feel. That kind of quiet strength, born from deep conviction, can shape who you are, and sometimes, even history itself. Amalasuntha, the Goth queen who loved Roman ways. Have you ever felt caught between two very different worlds? Maybe your family has one tradition, but your heart pulls you toward something new. This feeling is at the core of Amalasuntha's story. She was a queen of the Goths, a powerful people. But here's the thing, she deeply admired the Romans. Imagine being born into a culture known for its strength in battle, for a way of life that valued physical power. That was the Goths. Yet Amalasuntha saw the beauty in Roman art, the wisdom in their laws, and the power of their education. She wasn't just interested, she loved these things. She dreamed of a future where her people could have the best of both worlds, the strength of the Goths combined with the learning and grace of Rome. She worked hard to make this dream real. She wanted her son, the next king, to be educated in Roman ways. She read books, surrounded herself with scholars, and adopted Roman political ideas. But this wasn't easy. Many Goth nobles saw her efforts as a betrayal. They thought she was making their culture weak, forgetting their warrior roots. It was like trying to get your friends to try a new, strange food you absolutely love, but they just want to stick to what they know. This division in her heart, and among her people, became a heavy burden. She faced constant pushback, suspicion, and danger because she dared to look beyond her own heritage. Her story makes us wonder, how much courage does it take to stand for what you believe in, especially when it means going against your own people? Sometimes, being a bridge between worlds can be a lonely and dangerous path. But her vision, though tragically cut short, reminds us that humanity often grows strongest when we seek understanding and find beauty in unexpected places. Thecla, a saint who inspired many in Rome. Have you ever felt so strongly about something, a belief held deep inside you, that you knew you couldn't give it up, no matter what? Imagine a young woman in ancient Rome, named Thecla. She lived at a time when things were changing fast, and new ideas were spreading across the empire, especially about faith. Thecla was a young woman with a future planned for her, a comfortable life most people would envy, complete with a powerful husband-to-be. But then she heard the teachings of Paul, a man talking about a different way to live, a way focused on a deeper truth and a spiritual path that asked for great personal sacrifice. Here's the thing about Thecla: she chose to follow that path, even though it meant turning away from everything familiar. It wasn't easy. Her family, her community, they all expected her to stick to the old ways, to marry and fulfill her societal role. People thought she was crazy, maybe even dangerous, for believing something so new and different. But she had this incredible inner strength, a quiet fire that wouldn't let her back down. She stood up for what she believed in, even when it meant facing anger from her own mother, punishment from authorities, and incredible public danger. Her story tells us she faced threats to her life, yet her resolve never broke. Think about it like this: have you ever had to make a really tough choice, like deciding to study for a big test when all your friends are going out and having fun? Or maybe standing up for someone who's being treated unfairly, even if it makes you unpopular with the crowd? It takes a special kind of courage to do what you believe is right, especially when everyone else is pushing you in another direction. Thecla's courage wasn't just about physical bravery. It was about the strength of her spirit, about knowing in her heart what was truly important for her life. She showed that one person, with true conviction, can light a spark that ignites hope in others. Her choices, her quiet defiance, resonated deeply with many who heard her story. She became a powerful symbol for those who felt unseen, for those who also yearned for a different kind of truth in a world full of rigid rules. Thecla's story is a powerful reminder that true strength isn't always loud or obvious. It's often about the personal, unwavering commitment to what you hold dear, to an inner voice that guides you, even when the entire world pushes back. And that kind of quiet strength, that belief in your own truth, can inspire profound hope and courage in countless others, echoing across centuries, reminding us all to listen to our deepest selves. Agnes of Rome, a young girl's courageous faith. Have you ever felt so strongly about something, so deeply convinced in your heart, that you knew you couldn't give it up, no matter what? Imagine being just 13 years old, still a child, living in ancient Rome, a world very different from ours. This is the story of Agnes, a young girl whose courage glowed brighter than any flame in her time. Following the Christian faith was dangerous. The Roman Empire wanted everyone to worship its many gods, but Agnes believed in one God. Her faith was everything to her. She was asked, even forced, to deny what she felt was true, to give up her beliefs to save herself. But here's the thing about true conviction: it's not something you can just switch off. It becomes part of who you are, deeply woven into your spirit. Think about a time you had to stand up for something you knew was right, even when it was unpopular or scary. Maybe you saw someone being treated unfairly and spoke up, or perhaps you chose what was honest over what was easy. That deep feeling inside you, that quiet strength, is a bit like what Agnes felt. She had an inner knowing, a powerful sense of truth that made her incredibly brave. Agnes faced huge challenges because of her faith. Her story tells us that even the youngest among us can possess incredible spiritual strength. It's a strength not from muscles or power, but from a quiet certainty within your own heart. Her legacy isn't about grand battles. It's about the profound power of holding on to your truth, even when the world demands you let go. It shows us how deeply personal belief can shape a life and change history through a single, unwavering spirit. Cecilia, a Roman saint whose music still inspires. Have you ever wondered how a person from thousands of years ago can still feel so real, so important, especially through something as timeless as music? Here's the thing about Cecilia: she was a Roman woman, living a very long time ago, in a time when being a Christian was incredibly dangerous. But her story isn't just about ancient history, it's about a deep, quiet strength that still echoes today. Cecilia felt a profound connection to God, and she expressed this through music, an inner song that played within her heart. Even when she was forced into marriage, or later faced terrible challenges because of her faith, it's said that she sang to God in her heart. This wasn't some loud, public performance. It was a private, powerful devotion that no one could take away from her. The stories say that even as instruments played at her wedding, she sang only to God. This picture of her, finding peace and purpose within herself despite outward pressure, became a powerful idea. Later, because of her unwavering spirit and this beautiful idea of her inner music, Cecilia became known as the patron saint of musicians. Think about it like this. When you're really lost in a favorite song, maybe playing your guitar or just humming along, and everything else around you just melts away. Or when you're totally focused on drawing or writing a story, and it feels like the pen or brush is an extension of your own thoughts. That feeling, that deep, personal connection to something beautiful inside you, is a bit like Cecilia's inner music. It was her core, her peace, even when the outside world was chaotic and threatening. This can help you understand her journey, how she found strength. Her story, passed down through generations, isn't about grand battles or political power. It's about the lasting power of an individual spirit, of finding your own sacred rhythm, your own inner truth, and that's why it matters. It teaches us that true inspiration often comes from a deep, internal well of passion and belief. A quiet song that can outlast empires and still touch our hearts today. It invites us to listen for our own inner melodies, to find that personal strength that makes us resilient, and to understand how a silent devotion can become a loud, beautiful legacy across centuries. Perpetua, a mother's strength in the face of danger. Have you ever thought about how strong a person can be, especially when they really believe in something, or how far a mother's love can stretch? This is the story of Perpetua, a young woman in ancient Rome who faced an impossible choice. She lived in a time when being a Christian was incredibly dangerous. The Roman Empire wanted everyone to worship their gods, and if you didn't, you could be arrested, even put to death. Perpetua was educated, from a good family, and she had a newborn baby she was still nursing, but she was also a Christian, and she refused to give up her faith. Here's the thing. When she was arrested, her own father begged her to change her mind. He held her tiny baby, pleaded with her to just pretend to worship the Roman gods, to save her life and stay with her child. Imagine that pressure. Imagine having to choose between your deepest belief and the child you love more than anything. It's a bit like knowing something is absolutely right in your heart, but everyone else wants you to just go along with something wrong to avoid trouble, or standing up for a friend when it's easier to stay quiet. For Perpetua, the stakes were life and death. Even in prison, even as she worried for her baby, she held on to her faith. Her strength wasn't about fighting or being loud. It was a quiet, unshakable power deep inside her. It was the fierce love she had for her child, combined with an equally fierce belief that there was something more important than fear. Her story reminds us that true courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. It shows us the amazing power of a mother's love, and how our beliefs can shape who we are, even in the hardest moments. Perpetua teaches us that sometimes the greatest strength is found in standing firm, with a quiet heart, for what you believe is true. Felicitas, a mother and her 7 sons, all brave. What does it truly mean to be brave? Is it only about charging into battle, or fighting for glory? Sometimes, courage shines in quieter, yet powerful ways. We often hear about Roman emperors and soldiers, but today, we're looking at Felicitas. Her story isn't about conquests, but of an unbreakable spirit and a love so strong it echoes through history. Here's the thing about Rome. It was powerful, but also tough on those who didn't follow its traditions. Choosing a new path, like early Christianity, meant terrible danger. Felicitas was a mother, with 7 sons. Imagine loving each of them completely. Then imagine being told you must give up your beliefs, and make your sons do the same, or all of you would face death. This wasn't a simple choice. It was the ultimate test. Felicitas had no army, no sword, but her strength was immense. She chose to stand by her beliefs, and encouraged her sons. Think about a time you had to make a really tough choice, maybe standing up for what was right when it was unpopular, like refusing to cheat, or defending a friend. That feeling in your gut, the one that tells you to hold firm. That's a small piece of what Felicitas felt. It's about knowing your truth and sticking to it, no matter how scary things get. Her story shows us something profound. A mother's love can be the deepest kind of bravery. It's a love that prepares children not just for life, but for facing fears. Felicitas taught her sons that some things, like faith and truth, are worth more than life itself, and that's why it matters. Her legacy isn't about power or fame, but the quiet strength of conviction and the endless courage of a mother's heart. Real heroes aren't always found in battle stories, but in the choices made, driven by love. Fabiola, a Roman lady who built hospitals. Have you ever wondered what it was like to be seriously sick in ancient Rome, long before hospitals existed? Imagine feeling terrible, with nowhere to go for help. For many, especially the poor, this was a terrifying reality. If you didn't have a wealthy family, you were often left alone to suffer. Then came Fabiola, a remarkable Roman lady from a rich family in the 4th century. She knew sadness and searched for meaning. When she became a Christian, something deep inside her changed. She saw the sick and suffering on the streets, the elderly, the forgotten, and her heart broke. Here's the thing. Rome had grand buildings, but no public places for medical care, especially for the poor. So Fabiola did something truly revolutionary. She used her own wealth and powerful spirit to create the very first public hospital in Rome. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't a small clinic. It was a dedicated place for people who had nothing, a sanctuary for the suffering. She didn't just pay for it. She worked there herself, tending to the sick, cleaning wounds, and offering comfort. It's like if someone today built a massive free hospital because they saw suffering, and then helped every day. Daughter actions were a huge deal. This was a new idea, that everyone, no matter how poor, deserved care and kindness when sick. Her compassion sparked a movement. It wasn't about fame. It was about love and making a real difference. Fabiola showed that empathy, the ability to truly feel what others are going through, isn't just a soft feeling. It can be a powerful force that builds institutions, changes lives, and leaves a legacy of caring that echoes through history, reminding us what it means to be truly human. Paula, a Roman matron who embraced learning. Have you ever felt a deep, quiet pull towards something, like a book or a topic, that just won't let go? For many Roman women, their lives were mostly about managing their homes and raising families, and that's important work. But some souls, like Paula, looked beyond those expectations. She was a wealthy Roman woman, a matron with a respected family, but her heart yearned for something different. Paula chose a life of intense study, a path not many noble women traveled. She didn't just casually read, she truly embraced learning. This meant spending her days poring over texts, learning new languages like Greek and Hebrew, and diving deep into the Bible and ancient philosophies. It was a commitment of her entire being, not just a passing interest. Imagine giving your whole self to understanding complex ideas, searching for truth in old books. That was Paula. She sought knowledge not for power or fame, but because it fed her soul. Back then, it wasn't common for women of her standing to devote themselves entirely to such intellectual pursuits, but Paula found immense joy and purpose in it. It was like she found her own quiet universe in every scroll. Think about when you're really into a subject at school, or a hobby, or a specific video game where you just want to understand every single detail, every hidden meaning. You spend hours, not because someone tells you to, but because it feels good to explore and learn. That deep personal drive to know more, to connect with ancient wisdom, shaped Paula's life. Her quiet dedication shows us something beautiful. It reminds us that our deepest connections can sometimes be with ideas, with ancient voices, and with the endless quest for understanding. Paula found her strength, her peace, and her identity, not in what society expected, but in the quiet, persistent growth of her own mind. Her story is a gentle whisper, telling us that a life filled with learning is a life truly lived. Marcella of Rome, leading women in study and prayer. Have you ever felt a quiet pull, a whisper in your heart, telling you there's more to life than just what everyone else is doing? Marcella of Rome felt that deeply. She was born into incredible wealth, a Roman noblewoman who could have spent her days in endless luxury and grand parties. But here's the thing, she chose a profoundly different path. Instead of chasing fleeting pleasures and social status, Marcella dedicated her life to study, to prayer, and to creating a unique kind of community for women. Imagine a grand Roman house, not filled with loud feasts or political scheming, but with women gathered. They weren't gossiping, they were poring over ancient texts, discussing philosophy, and deepening their understanding of their faith. That's the vibrant haven Marcella established. It was a space for deep thought, a refuge from the busy, often superficial Roman world around them. This wasn't typical for women in ancient Rome. Most noble women were expected to marry, raise children, and manage a sprawling household. Marcella boldly broke that mold. She showed that a woman's strength could bloom from her sharp mind, her resilient spirit, and her unwavering devotion to learning. Think of it like deciding to spend your free time mastering a complex skill, perhaps coding or playing a difficult musical instrument, instead of just scrolling social media. It's often harder, yes, but the reward is a deep sense of accomplishment and a unique kind of inner growth. Marcella sought that deeper reward, and she found it. Even the famous scholar Saint Jerome respected her wisdom and learned from her. Her choices remind us that true leadership isn't always about commanding armies or holding political power. Sometimes it's about leading by quiet example, by living a life of purpose and inner conviction. It's about creating an inspiring space for others to grow. Marcella showed us that finding wisdom inside yourself and helping others find it can be the most powerful and enduring legacy of all, and that's why it truly matters. Olympias, the deaconess, a wealthy widow's generosity. What would you do if you suddenly had more money than you could ever spend? Imagine a fortune so vast you could buy anything you ever wanted. Most people might think of grand houses, fancy clothes, or exciting adventures. But what if your heart led you in a completely different direction? Here's the thing, that's exactly what happened with Olympias, a remarkable woman from Roman times. Olympias was born into incredible wealth, a true heiress in the truest sense. Her family was powerful, connected, and rich. When her husband died young, she inherited even more. She could have lived a life of total luxury, far away from the struggles of everyday people. But Olympias chose another path entirely. She became a deaconess in the early Christian church. This wasn't just a title, it meant she was dedicated to serving others, especially the poor and the sick. It was a role of deep commitment, a way to put faith into action. She didn't just give a little money here and there. Olympias gave away almost everything she owned. Think about it like this. Imagine your favorite celebrity, someone super famous and rich. Now, imagine they decide to give away their entire fortune, not just some of it, but nearly all of it, to help build hospitals, feed hungry families, and house people who don't have homes. That's the scale of Olympias's generosity. It wasn't about showing off or gaining fame. It was a quiet, determined act of love and belief. Her actions helped countless people. She supported the church, cared for orphans, and gave shelter to those fleeing injustice. She understood that real wealth wasn't just about what you possessed, but about the good you could do with it. Her life shows us that sometimes the most profound changes don't come from grand armies or powerful emperors, but from the quiet, persistent kindness of one person, willing to share everything they have. It's a powerful reminder that generosity can truly change the world, one life, one act of caring, at a time. Melania the Younger, giving up everything for good. Have you ever thought about what you really, truly value? Like, what if you had to choose between everything you own and something you believed in more than anything? Here's the story of Melania the Younger, a Roman woman who faced a choice like that, but on an incredible scale. Melania was born into a super-rich family in ancient Rome. We're talking more money than you could ever imagine. Huge estates, fancy houses, servants, the works. She had a life most people could only dream of. But here's the thing, Melania felt a deep calling, a spiritual pull that was stronger than all her jewels and fancy clothes. She believed in God so much that she wanted to give her whole life to helping others and living a simple, prayerful existence. So, what did she do? She decided to give it all away. Imagine selling your favorite video games, your cool clothes, your phone, everything, and using the money to build a shelter for homeless animals, or a library for kids who can't afford books. That's kind of what Melania did, but with an empire's worth of stuff. She convinced her husband to join her. Together, they sold their vast properties, freed their thousands of enslaved people, and gave the money to the poor, to churches, and to people in need all across the Roman world. It wasn't an easy decision. People probably thought she was crazy. Her family might have been upset, but Melania chose a life of purpose over a life of luxury. She believed true wealth wasn't in gold or power, but in compassion and serving something bigger than herself. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would it feel like to let go of everything familiar, to step into the unknown, all for a cause you believed was truly good? Her story reminds us that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't things we can hold, but the quiet strength of our beliefs and the lasting impact we make by choosing to live a life dedicated to kindness. Proba, a Roman poet who retold the Bible. Have you ever thought about how old stories can teach us new things, or how words can be taken apart and put back together to create something totally different? That's what a remarkable woman named Proba did long ago in ancient Rome. Proba was a poet. She lived when Christianity was becoming popular in the Roman Empire. The old Roman world had its own sacred stories, especially those written by a poet named Virgil. His words were like the most famous song lyrics or movie quotes of their time. Everyone knew them. Everyone respected them. What Proba did was truly unique. She took thousands of lines from Virgil's famous poems and rearranged them. She didn't write new words. Instead, she used Virgil's lines to tell the stories from the Bible. Imagine taking snippets from all your favorite book series like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson and using only those lines to tell a completely different story. It sounds impossible, right? But Proba did this with the Bible. This wasn't just a clever trick. It was a deep act of connection. For many Romans, the Bible felt new and foreign. But by telling its stories with words they already cherished, Proba made the new faith feel familiar. She built a bridge between two worlds, showing that old wisdom and new beliefs could speak to each other. It was her way of saying, look, these stories, these values, they are not so different. Proba's work reminds us that creativity isn't just about making something from nothing. Sometimes, it's about seeing new possibilities in what already exists. It's about finding a common thread, a way to understand, even when things seem very far apart. Her poem, written by a Roman woman, quietly invited people to look closer, to feel more connected, and that's a powerful lesson, even today. Egeria, a pilgrim's amazing journey across lands. Have you ever felt a deep pull? A quiet but strong feeling that you had to see something, or go somewhere far away, just because it called to your spirit? Imagine that feeling, but in a world from over 1,600 years ago. Travel then was slow, hard, and often very dangerous. There were no maps on phones, no comfy buses, just dusty roads and unknown paths. Now picture a woman named Egeria, from somewhere in the Roman Empire, deciding to set out on a journey that would take years of her life. Egeria chose to be a pilgrim. That means she traveled for religious reasons, to visit holy places she felt deeply connected to. But her journey wasn't just to one spot. She went across huge parts of the Middle East, through Jerusalem, Egypt, to the top of Mount Sinai, even to faraway lands like Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. Just think about that. She crossed vast deserts, climbed mountains, and faced dangers we can barely imagine today, all because her faith and curiosity pulled her forward. Here's the thing. Most people back then, especially women, never left their small towns. Egeria wasn't just brave. She had incredible grit. Her adventure was like someone today deciding to walk across an entire continent, carrying everything they own, without a clear path, or even knowing if they'd make it back. Her journey wasn't about getting famous or rich. It was about understanding, about seeing the stories she'd heard with her own eyes, connecting with something much bigger than just her own life. She wrote down everything she saw and felt in a special travel diary. This journal, or parts of it that still exist, gives us an amazing peek into her world and her brave, thoughtful mind. Her writing isn't just a boring list of places she visited. It's full of wonder and quiet awe. You can feel her excitement describing ancient cities and her calm reflection in sacred spots. Her story reminds us that sometimes the biggest, most important journeys are not just across lands, but deep inside ourselves. They are driven by a burning curiosity or a strong, quiet belief. Egeria's long, steady walk into the unknown shows us the amazing strength of one person's spirit, inspiring us to explore our own unique paths, no matter how challenging they might seem. Anisha Juliana, a wealthy woman who built churches. Have you ever wondered what you'd do if you had everything? I mean, truly everything, more money than you could ever spend, a family name known across the entire world, and a life of privilege most people could only dream of. In ancient Rome, a woman named Anisha Juliana lived that very life. She was born into one of the most powerful and richest families in the Roman Empire. a direct descendant of emperors and leaders. She could have spent her days on endless luxuries, throwing grand parties, or simply living a quiet, comfortable life of ease. But Juliana chose a different path, one that still speaks to us today. This was a time when the Roman Empire was changing, and Christianity was becoming a powerful force. Juliana was a devout Christian, and her faith guided her choices. Instead of just enjoying her immense wealth, she saw it as a tool, a way to build something lasting, something for her community and for her beliefs. So, what did she do? She used her fortune to build churches, magnificent structures that served as places of worship, gathering, and comfort for many. Think about it like this. Imagine your town needs a brand new community center, a place where everyone can go, learn, and feel welcome. It would take a huge amount of effort, fundraising, and donations from many people to make that happen. Juliana essentially did that, but on a massive scale, building not just one, but several impressive churches, largely with her own resources. Her most famous work, the Church of St. Polyactus in Constantinople, was so grand, it influenced architecture for centuries. It wasn't just about making a building. It was about investing in the spiritual well-being of thousands. Her actions show us something important. Even with all the power and wealth she possessed, her deepest mark on history wasn't about what she bought for herself, but what she gave away. It reminds us that true influence often comes from how we choose to use our gifts, our time, or our resources to uplift others. Juliana's story whispers across time, a gentle reminder that some of the greatest legacies are built, not with gold, but with generosity, faith, and a heart set on making a lasting difference for the good of all. Aspasia, a wise teacher and friend to scholars. Have you ever wondered who taught the people we call great thinkers, who inspired the ones who inspired everyone else? For some of ancient Athens' brightest minds, a woman named Aspasia held that special place. She wasn't born into power or famous battles, but her mind shone like a beacon, drawing scholars and leaders to her side. Aspasia lived in a time when women often stayed hidden, their voices rarely heard in public. But Aspasia was different. She was known for her brilliant speaking skills and her deep understanding of philosophy. That's the study of big ideas about life and how we should live. She became a close companion and advisor to Pericles, one of Athens' most powerful leaders. But she didn't just advise, she taught. Imagine a classroom where the students included the most respected men of the city, even the philosopher Socrates himself. Here's the thing about Aspasia. She created a space where minds could truly connect. She held discussions, almost like modern-day seminars, right in her home. People came to learn from her, to debate, and to share their own thoughts. It was a place where ideas could grow freely, without the usual rules holding women back. Think of it like a really amazing study group, but for the most important ideas in the world, and everyone feels comfortable sharing. This kind of open exchange of ideas, where everyone feels respected, helps people learn and grow so much. Aspasia's true impact wasn't about building monuments or leading armies. It was about shaping minds, about planting seeds of thought in the hearts of those who would then go on to shape their world. Her friendship and wisdom offered a quiet strength, a gentle nudge towards deeper understanding, and that's why her story matters so much. It reminds us that wisdom and influence aren't always loud or obvious. Sometimes, the most profound changes begin with a thoughtful conversation and a brilliant teacher who believes in the power of ideas. Gaia Aphrenia, a woman lawyer who spoke her mind. Have you ever felt like you had something important to say, but everyone expected you to stay quiet? Imagine that feeling. But in ancient Rome, a time when women rarely spoke in public, especially not in a courtroom. Here's the thing about Gaia Aphrenia. She lived around 100 BC in her world. Women usually had men like their fathers or husbands speak for them in legal matters. It was just how things were then. Women were meant to be modest, to be heard through others. But Gaia couldn't do it. Her spirit was too strong, her need for justice too great, to let someone else speak her truth. So, here's what happened. Gaia Aphrenia argued her own cases in court. She would stand before judges, facing a crowd, and speak passionately for herself. This was unheard of. People called her shameless and bold, often as an insult. She was seen as someone breaking all the rules, stepping outside what was considered proper for a woman. Think about it like this. Imagine in a group project, one person always presents for everyone, but one day, you step forward yourself and speak your own ideas, even if it makes you nervous. That's a bit like what Gaia did. She knew people would judge her, but she also knew her voice had to be heard. It wasn't easy. She faced ridicule and criticism, but she kept going. She refused to be silenced, choosing to use her own voice because it felt right. Her story reminds us that sometimes the bravest act is simply to be yourself, to speak your truth, even when the world tells you to be quiet. It's a quiet strength, a lesson from a woman who dared to stand up for the idea that every voice truly matters. Marcia Asensio, a woman who defended herself in court. Have you ever felt like you had something important to say, but no one expected you to speak? Maybe others assumed someone else would speak for you. Your voice just wasn't needed. Imagine that feeling, but amplified. Long ago, in ancient Rome, women rarely spoke in public, especially not in court. Their voices were often silent, meant to be represented by men, fathers, husbands, or guardians. But then there was Marcia Asensio. She was accused of a serious crime. Instead of letting a man speak for her, as was the custom, Marcia Asensio decided she would defend herself. Think about that. Picture the cold marble halls, the stern faces, the heavy weight of expectation. For a woman to stand before judges and a crowd, to argue her own case, was almost unheard of. It took incredible courage, a fire deep inside, to step forward when society wanted her to stay silent. It's like when you know you're right in a class discussion, and everyone else disagrees. You stand firm and explain your side, even if your heart beats fast. You find that inner strength, that conviction. The ancient Roman writer Valerius Maximus tells us Marcia Asensio spoke with such skill and force that she won her case. She was found not guilty. This wasn't just a legal victory. It was a victory for her spirit, for her right to be heard. It showed that true strength isn't always physical power, but the power of belief, of a clear voice, and the courage to use it. Her story makes us think about what it truly means to have a voice. It reminds us that even when the world tries to quiet you, there's power in speaking up for yourself, in trusting your own mind and heart. Her courage whispers through time, a quiet but strong reminder to always find your voice, especially when it feels like no one expects you to have one. Volumnia, mother of Coriolanus, saving Rome with tears. Have you ever thought about how powerful a mother's love can be, not just to comfort you, but to actually change the course of history? That's what happened with Volumnia, a Roman mother whose story shows us a different kind of strength. Here's what I found. Her son Coriolanus was a fierce Roman general, but he was exiled from Rome after a big argument. He felt hurt and angry. So, here's what happened. He gathered an enemy army and marched it right to Rome's gates, ready to destroy the city that had cast him out. Everyone in Rome was terrified. No one could convince him to stop. But Volumnia, his mother, knew she had to try. She went out to meet him, not with an army, but with his wife, his children, and many other Roman women. Think about this. A mother, facing her angry, powerful son, who was about to attack everything she held dear. She didn't yell or make threats. Instead, she spoke to him with deep sadness, with tears in her eyes. She reminded him of his duty, of his family, of the city that was also his home. She appealed to the son she had raised, to the man she loved. It's like when you're really upset about something, maybe a disagreement with a friend. You're ready to stand your ground, maybe even walk away. But then, someone you deeply respect, like your parent, looks at you with a quiet, pleading gaze. They don't scold you. They just show you how much your actions matter, and how much they care. That look, that deep feeling, can sometimes melt away all your anger, can't it? That's what Volumnia did. Her tears weren't a sign of weakness. They were a powerful message of love and heartbreak, and that's why it matters. Coriolanus, standing there ready to wage war, could not bear to see his mother so broken. He couldn't go through with it. He turned his army away. He chose his mother's love over revenge. So, this story reminds us that true power isn't always about armies or battles. Sometimes, the strongest force is the quiet, deep connection between people, especially family. It shows how love and empathy can be the most potent tools to stop destruction, bringing peace even when all hope seems lost. Vittoria, another mother who pleaded for Rome. Have you ever considered the true strength of a mother's love, the kind that can stop an entire army? Ancient Rome faced many dangers, but sometimes the biggest threat came from within. This is Vittoria's story. Her son Coriolanus, a powerful Roman general, felt Rome had wronged him. So, he gathered an army, marching against his own city, ready to destroy it. Imagine a son turning against his family and home. The Romans were terrified. They sent their leaders to beg Coriolanus to stop. He refused. His heart was set on revenge. Then Vittoria arrived, heartbroken, yet determined. She walked to her son's camp with her daughter-in-law and grandsons. Think about being really angry, feeling totally justified. Maybe someone tried to talk you out of it, but you couldn't let it go. Now picture your own mother, tears in her eyes, pleading not just for her safety, but for everything you hold dear. That's She didn't shout. She simply looked at her son, a mother asking for mercy. For Rome, for him, she reminded him of his duty, his family, their unbreakable bond. She showed him his children, who would suffer. Her quiet pain, her deep love, touched something inside him. Anger had hardened his heart, but her plea broke through. It was a silent battle, fought not with swords, but with a mother's profound love. Coriolanus saw his mother, his resolve shattered. He couldn't fight her. He turned his army away. He chose his mother, and through her, he chose Rome. Vittoria's story reminds us that true power isn't always in armies. It's often in the quiet, unwavering love of family. It shows how a heartfelt connection can change history, even in the darkest moments. This reminds us of the deep strengths within us, especially the strength of a mother's heart. Camilla, a warrior maiden who fought for her people. Have you ever felt a fierce need to protect someone you love? A friend, your family? Imagine that feeling, stretched across an entire nation, an entire people. That's the heart of Camilla, a warrior maiden from ancient Rome's stories. She wasn't just brave. She showed a loyalty so deep it could challenge empires. Camilla grew up far from city walls, raised in the wild, taught to hunt and fight from a young age. Her father, an exiled king, entrusted her to the goddess Diana, making her a sacred warrior. She was swift, strong, incredibly skilled with a spear, riding into battle faster than the wind. Camilla fought not for glory or conquest, but for her own people. They were a smaller nation, facing the mighty forces led by Enigma, the hero who would eventually found Rome. It was a fight where the odds were truly against them, a battle for their survival. Think about when your favorite sports team was the underdog, facing a much stronger opponent. Even knowing winning was a long shot, they played with all their heart, every player giving their best for their team, for their town. That's Camilla. She knew what she faced, but her commitment to her home, her people, was unshakable. She rode into battle, a dazzling, terrifying force, embodying the spirit of resistance, refusing to let her people fall without a fight. Her story, famously told in Virgil's Aeneid, reminds us that true strength isn't always about winning. Sometimes, it's about standing firm, even when defeat seems certain, because some things are worth fighting for with every fiber of your being. It's about love for your home, your community, and the quiet, powerful courage found in defending what you hold dear, no matter the cost. Her legacy isn't just a warrior's skill, it's a warrior's heart, forever beating for her own. Claudia Augusta, Nero's infant daughter, a glimpse of hope. Have you ever noticed how even the smallest light makes a big difference in a dark room? Sometimes, in the most troubled times, a tiny spark of life offers pure hope. This is a bit like the story of Claudia Augusta, Emperor Nero's infant daughter. Nero's rule was often marked by cruelty and fear. He was powerful, and many people were scared of him. But for a brief period, his world, and perhaps all of Rome, paused for a little girl. Claudia Augusta was born in 63 AD. Her birth was a huge event. People celebrated, and coins showed her image. Here's why it matters. In an empire filled with political plots and harsh rule, a new baby, especially an emperor's child, represented continuity. It was a sign of the future, hinting at a softer side for a leader known for his hardness. Think about it like this. When you're having a really tough week, maybe struggling with a project, then someone does something kind, or a new, exciting plan is announced. It's a small thing, but it brings a sudden, welcome change. Claudia Augusta was that welcome change for Rome. She was a symbol, a chance for Romans to dream of a more peaceful future, guided by this new, innocent life. But her life was heartbreakingly short. She died just for months after birth. Even Nero, who seemed so ruthless, was deeply affected. He held a state funeral, had statues made, and even declared her a goddess. Her passing reminded Rome how fragile life can be, and that's why it matters. Claudia Augusta, even in her short time, reminds us that hope can bloom in tough places. Her brief life showed that even in a world dominated by power and darkness, moments of innocent possibility can touch hearts and leave a quiet, lasting impression of what could have been. Domitia Lucilla Minor, the mother of an emperor. A good woman. Have you ever thought about how much the people closest to you shape who you become? Sometimes, the most important influences aren't famous heroes or rulers, but quiet figures who teach us what it means to be good. That's how it was with Domitia Lucilla Minor. She wasn't an empress known for grand deeds, but she was the mother of Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's wisest and most respected emperors. And here's the thing, her son believed she taught him everything that mattered. Marcus Aurelius, in his personal writings, looked back and wrote about his mother with such deep love and respect. He said she taught him piety, generosity, and to avoid doing wrong, even in his thoughts. He remembered her simple lifestyle, how she avoided the showy ways of Rome, and her deep love for her children. She wasn't about power or showing off. She was about character and kindness. Think about a strong, healthy tree. It stands tall and provides shade, but its power comes from its roots, hidden deep in the earth. Those roots aren't seen, but they feed the tree, help it stand firm against winds, and let it grow beautiful and strong. Domitia Lucilla was like those roots for Marcus. She nurtured his spirit, giving him the values that helped him become a fair and thoughtful leader of Rome. Her story reminds us that true greatness isn't always about crowns or winning battles. Sometimes, it's about the quiet work of raising a child with love, honesty, and a good heart. It shows that the lessons learned at home, the simple example of a kind parent, can live on long after they are gone, shaping leaders and, in turn, shaping history. It's a powerful idea. The most important legacies can start in the most personal and humble ways. Pompey Platina, an empress known for her kindness. Have you ever wondered what truly makes someone great? Long after they're gone, is it power, or wealth, or something deeper, something quieter? We often remember Roman emperors for their battles and their grand buildings, but what about the women who stood beside them, or sometimes even gently guided them? Pompey Platina, the wife of Emperor Trajan, reminds us that real strength can be found in the softest heart. She wasn't known for huge shows of power. Instead, she was loved for her deep kindness and her simple way of living. Here's the thing, Platina used her position not to gain more for herself, but to help others, especially those who had less. Imagine an empress who fought to make schools better, or who worked to give poor children more chances. She even pushed for laws that gave women more rights and made life fairer for everyone in the empire. This can help you understand her gentle but powerful impact. It's easy to think that great leaders need to be tough and always in charge. But Platina showed that a leader's true legacy isn't built on fear, but on genuine care. She believed in using her voice to lift people up, to make their lives a little easier. Think about a time when a teacher or a friend went out of their way to help you, not because they had to, but because they genuinely cared. That feeling, that quiet support, can change everything for you. Like how one kind word can totally shift your entire day. Platina had that kind of effect, not just on one person, but on an entire empire. She wove kindness into the very fabric of how the empire worked. Her time as empress wasn't about flashy victories or personal glory. It was about planting seeds of goodness, like a gardener tending to a vast, important field. And that's why it matters. Her memory shows us that even the gentlest soul can leave the strongest, most beautiful mark on history. It reminds us that empathy, truly caring for others, is a powerful force that genuinely changes the world, one gentle, thoughtful act at a time. Vibia Sabina, the empress who traveled the world. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to see the entire world, not just in pictures, but with your own eyes? Back when travel was a grand adventure, imagine a young woman, not much older than you, suddenly thrust into a life of immense power and constant motion. This was Vibia Sabina, the Empress of Rome, wife to the Emperor Hadrian. Here's the thing, most people in ancient Rome lived their whole lives without ever leaving their hometown. But Sabina, she journeyed across an empire that stretched further than anyone could imagine. Her life was a winding road through different lands, from the sandy deserts of Egypt to the bustling markets of Greece, from the cold northern borders to the ancient wonders of Asia Minor. She wasn't just a tourist, she was the empress, traveling with a huge imperial court, making decisions, meeting leaders. Think about what that would feel like. It's like being a famous explorer, constantly seeing new sights, hearing new languages, tasting new foods. and feeling the shift in the very air around you. It's an endless school, teaching about the vastness of human life and culture. For us today, seeing the world often means scrolling through photos or watching videos, but Sabina experienced it all directly. Each new city, each different landscape, must have etched itself into her memory, shaping her view of everything. It's a bit like when you try a new hobby or sport, and suddenly your perspective on challenges or teamwork changes completely. Seeing so much of the world, she must have carried the weight of its many faces within her. Her journeys were not just trips, but a profound way of understanding the immense varied tapestry of the Roman world, and maybe her own place within it. It's a quiet reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures we find aren't gold or jewels, but the wisdom gathered from every step we take on life's long, winding path. Salonina, an empress during troubled times, have you ever felt like the world around you was just too much? Like everything was spinning out of control? Imagine that feeling, but on the scale of an entire empire. That's a bit like the time Salonina lived in. She was an empress of Rome, and her era was incredibly difficult. A period historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. Here's the thing. For about 50 years, Rome was in constant chaos. Emperors came and went quickly, sometimes within months. There were wars everywhere, rebellions, and deep fear. People didn't know if their leaders would last, or if their towns would be safe. The world felt deeply unstable. Yet, in the middle of all that, Salonina tried to bring a different kind of strength. She wasn't leading armies, but her fight was for the spirit of Rome. She believed in the power of art, learning, and kindness. She supported philosophers who searched for wisdom and artists who created beauty, even when it seemed like no one had time for such things. She understood that even when the outside world crumbles, our hearts and minds need things that are true and good. It's like when your classroom gets really noisy and everyone is talking at once. But then the teacher puts on a calm song or reads a story, and for a moment, everyone just breathes. Salonina tried to be that calm song for Rome. She tried to remind people of Rome's better ideals, even when its present was so troubled. Her story shows us that even when life feels broken, choosing to value beauty, seeking understanding, and acting with compassion can make a profound difference. It's a quiet courage, a strength that reminds us even in the darkest storms, human kindness and the search for light can still shine through. Macrina the Younger, a philosopher and saint. Have you ever thought about what it means to be truly strong, not just physically, but deep down, inside your mind and spirit? For many ancient Roman women, strength was often about family connections or social status, but Macrina the Younger, who lived a long time ago in the 4th century, showed a different kind of power. She was born into a very important and wealthy family, full of famous brothers and sisters, but she chose a path that was completely her own. Macrina could have had any life she wanted, filled with luxury and influence, but she looked beyond all of that. Instead, she decided to dedicate her life to deep thought, learning, and helping others. She became a kind of spiritual leader and teacher, even though women in her time didn't usually hold such public roles. She turned her family estate into a place where people could come to study, pray, and live simply, sharing everything they had. It was a radical idea back then, choosing to give up worldly things to focus on inner wisdom. She believed that true freedom came from within, from understanding yourself and living by your deepest values. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in a busy, noisy room. Everyone is talking loud, trying to get attention. But then, there's one person who is quiet, listening, and thinking deeply. Their quiet presence might actually be the strongest in the room. Macrina was like that. She built her strength not on outward show, but on inner peace and careful thought. She challenged the idea that happiness came from having more things or more power. Instead, she taught that real contentment came from self-control, kindness, and focusing on what truly matters. Her life reminds us that sometimes, the most profound changes happen not through loud declarations, but through quiet, unwavering dedication to your own truth. It's about finding your inner compass and following it, even when the world pulls you in other directions. Macrina shows us that a life of deep purpose and meaning is always possible, no matter what expectations society places on you. Her wisdom still speaks to us today, a gentle but powerful voice across centuries. Monica, a mother's prayers that changed a saint. Have you ever wished for something so deeply, so consistently, that it felt like your whole heart was pouring into it, day after day, year after year? This isn't about wishing for a new phone or a perfect test score. This is about a wish for someone you love, a wish that cuts right to your soul. Meet Monica, a Roman woman whose story shows the amazing power of a mother's enduring hope. She lived in a time when faith was changing the world, but her own brilliant son, Augustine, was lost to her in many ways. He was smart, yes, incredibly so, but he chose paths that broke her heart. He followed different ideas, made choices she worried about, and seemed far from the faith she held dear. Imagine that feeling, your child, growing up, making choices that sting you, not understanding the values you hold. Monica didn't give up. She didn't shout or demand. Instead, she prayed. She prayed for years. She cried. She spoke to God with a quiet, fierce determination that many couldn't understand. Her prayers were like a tiny, steady stream of water. You know how a single drop of water, falling on a hard stone, over and over, for a very long time, can eventually carve a deep groove. That was Monica's prayer. Not a sudden dramatic flood, but a constant, gentle, relentless flow of love and hope. People told her to give up. He's too far gone, they might have said. But Monica kept believing in the good she saw in him, even when it was buried deep. And here's what happened. After almost 2 decades of her unwavering love and prayer, Augustine did change. He turned his life around, became one of history's most important thinkers. St. Augustine. His transformation wasn't just a sudden switch. It was the slow, steady work of a mother's devotion. Monica's story reminds us that some of the most powerful forces in the world are not loud or grand. They are quiet acts of love, deep faith, and unbelievable patience. It shows us that true change, real lasting change, often begins with the quiet strength of someone who simply refuses to stop caring. It's a testament to how even the smallest, most consistent acts of love can over time move mountains. Flavia Domitilla, a Roman noblewoman, a Christian martyr. What would you truly give up for something you believed in with all your heart? Imagine everything you know, your family, your grand home, your social standing, all of it on the line. This was the impossible choice faced by Flavia Domitilla, a Roman noblewoman whose story whispers across centuries. She was from an incredibly powerful family, even related to emperors. But here's the thing, she chose to become a Christian. In ancient Rome, being Christian wasn't just a different religion, it was seen as an act of profound disloyalty. Romans worshipped many gods, and refusing to honor them, and especially the emperor, was like saying you didn't belong to the Roman way of life. Emperor Domitian was particularly harsh. He saw Christians as a dangerous threat. So, people like Flavia faced exile, torture, or even death. Think about a moment when you knew something was deeply right. A conviction that settled in your gut and wouldn't leave. Maybe it was seeing someone being unfair, and you had to speak up, even if it was scary. For Flavia, that belief was Christianity. Because of her faith, she was exiled. This meant being ripped away from her entire world, sent far from everything and everyone she knew, to a small, desolate island. She lost her grand home, her comfortable life. The sadness, the isolation, must have been overwhelming. Yet, she held on to a quiet, powerful conviction. Her story isn't about grand battles or loud speeches. It's about inner strength, a quiet defiance facing immense pressure. Flavia Domitilla reminds us that true power isn't always visible. Sometimes, the most profound changes begin with a single person holding on to their beliefs, their inner light, even when the world tells them they are wrong. And that quiet courage can truly inspire us. Blandina, a slave girl's brave stand for faith. What would you stand up for, even if it meant risking everything you have? Imagine living in a time when your most important beliefs could lead to terrible punishment, even death. This was a harsh reality for many people in ancient Rome, especially if they followed Christianity. And if you were a slave girl, like Blandina, your life was already incredibly difficult, with hardly any control or freedom. Yet Blandina showed a kind of strength that amazed everyone, even the people who were hurting her. During a brutal period when Roman authorities hunted down Christians in a city called Lyon, Blandina was captured. She seemed like one of the weakest among them. She was physically small and a slave, with no status. Other Christians worried she wouldn't survive the awful tests meant to make her deny her faith. The Romans tried everything, severe beatings, whips, and forcing her to watch her companions suffer. They expected her to break down quickly, but Blandina refused. Through all the pain, she simply kept repeating, "I am a Christian, and we commit no evil." Here's the thing, sometimes you just know deep down that something is true. It's a quiet, certain feeling inside you, even if everyone else tells you it's wrong or tries to make you change your mind. It's like knowing a friend is innocent when others accuse them, or believing in a cause no one else seems to care much about. Blandina had that same unshakable certainty. Her courage wasn't loud or angry. It was a calm, steady resolve that came from a place inside her that no physical torment could touch. The Roman guards were astonished. They kept trying, but her spirit never bent. She endured unbelievable pain, simply by holding on to her faith, inspiring others around her to stay strong too. Her story makes us think about where real power truly comes from. It's not always found in the biggest armies or the loudest voices. Sometimes, the most profound impact can come from the quietest person, someone who simply refuses to give up on what they believe is right, no matter the terrible cost. Blandina, a humble slave girl, showed an entire empire that inner conviction, and the immense strength it brings can overcome even the most horrifying cruelty. It's a powerful reminder that true courage often shines brightest in the darkest moments. Agrippina the Elder, a woman's courage in exile. Have you ever felt like you had to stand up for what was right, even when it felt incredibly scary or lonely? That's what we see in Agrippina the Elder, a woman born into extreme power, but who faced unbelievable hardship. She was the granddaughter of the first Roman emperor, Augustus. She married Germanicus, a beloved general, and everyone adored them. They were like the ultimate power couple, respected and admired by all of Rome. But here's the thing, sometimes, big power comes with big enemies. When Germanicus suddenly died, many believed he was poisoned, perhaps by the emperor Tiberius himself. Agrippina didn't stay quiet. She was a mother, grieving and angry. She dared to accuse the emperor, a move so dangerous, it almost sounds unbelievable. She spoke her truth, demanding justice for her husband. This bravery cost her everything. Tiberius saw her as a threat. He exiled her to a tiny, lonely island called Pandaria. Imagine being sent away from everyone you love, isolated and without comfort, just for speaking your mind. But even there, Agrippina refused to break. She refused to give up her honor, her loyalty to Germanicus, or her claim to her children's rightful place. She held on to her dignity, choosing to suffer rather than betray her beliefs. It's a bit like when you know someone has been really unfair to you, maybe even spread rumors, and you feel the pressure to just go along with it to avoid more trouble. But deep down, you know what's true, and letting it go would mean giving up a part of yourself. Agrippina felt that, but on a grand scale, with an empire against her. She endured starvation and died alone, still unyielding. So, her story makes you think about the quiet strength inside us, the kind that lets us hold on to our truth even when the world feels completely against us. Agrippina showed us that courage isn't just about fighting battles. It's also about a steadfast spirit that no amount of exile or injustice can truly defeat. Drusilla, Caligula's beloved sister. A strange story. Have you ever thought about how some relationships, even within a family, can become incredibly intense, almost to a disturbing degree, like a knot tied too tight, twisting what should be good into something else entirely? We're talking about Drusilla, sister to the Roman Emperor Caligula. Their story isn't about simple family love. It's a tale woven with power, obsession, and a kind of affection that became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Caligula, as you might know, was an emperor famous for his strange and often brutal rule. But for Drusilla, his sister, he showed a different face. He adored her. History tells us he loved her more than anyone, perhaps even more than was considered right. Even in ancient Rome, he treated her like a goddess, bestowing honors upon her. When she died young, he was heartbroken, truly devastated. He ordered the entire empire into mourning. He even went further, declaring her a divine being, a goddess of the Roman people. Imagine that your brother, the most powerful man in the world, literally declares you a god. Here's the thing, when someone has absolute power, like Caligula did, their feelings can grow without any limits or checks. There's no one to say, that's too much. Think of it like a science experiment where you keep adding one ingredient without balancing it with anything else. The reaction becomes unpredictable, even dangerous. That's a bit like what happened with Caligula's intense feelings for Drusilla. His love wasn't balanced by normal rules. It blossomed into something possessive and extreme because no one could tell an emperor no. So, this story makes us wonder about love when it's mixed with unchecked power. What happens when admiration turns into worship and affection becomes obsession? Drusilla's life, and her transformation into a goddess show us that even the most powerful human emotions, when left untamed, can leave a legacy that is both fascinating and profoundly sad. It's a quiet reminder that true connection needs space, respect, and balance, not just intense feeling. Livilla, a granddaughter of Augustus. Her tragic secret. Have you ever held a secret so big, you worried it could change everything if it came out? A choice, thrilling at first, then terrifying. In ancient Rome, even the most powerful felt this pressure. Livilla was one such woman. She was a granddaughter of Augustus, Rome's first emperor. Imagine, born into immense wealth, power, and high expectations. She was connected to everyone important, but sometimes, being part of such a grand family felt like a cage. Livilla was married to Drusus, Emperor Tiberius's son, a political match meant to secure the imperial line. Yet, history whispers a darker tale behind the golden facade. Here's the thing. Livilla became entangled with Sejanus, an ambitious Praetorian prefect who craved more power. The rumor grew. Livilla, driven by her feelings for Sejanus, and perhaps a longing for a different life, helped him in a terrible plot. She was accused of being involved in poisoning her own husband, Drusus. Can you imagine the immense weight of such a secret, a betrayal so profound? It's a bit like when someone gets caught up in a bad group. They might be tempted to do something wrong, just to fit in. That first step down a tricky path can lead to huge problems. Livilla's story shows how far ambition and hidden desires can push people, and how consequences ripple out. Her secret, once exposed, brought down Sejanus, and ultimately, Livilla herself. Her life, once full of imperial promise, ended in disgrace and deep sorrow. It reminds us that beneath grand titles, human hearts struggle with desires and fears. Hidden choices often shape our true path more deeply than any birthright. A secret can be a heavy burden, crushing even the strongest walls of power. Agrippina, wife of Germanicus, a mother's fight for her children's future. Have you ever wondered what it takes to protect the people you love most, especially when the world around you is dangerous and unfair? Imagine being a mother, living in a time when power could be taken away in an instant, and those who held it weren't always kind. This was Agrippina's world. A woman whose fierce love for her children shaped her destiny and challenged an empire. Agrippina was married to Germanicus, a brave and popular Roman general. They had 9 children together, but when Germanicus suddenly died, Agrippina found herself and her young family in a very vulnerable place. Here's the thing. In ancient Rome, the emperor's family was always watching, and often, they saw rivals everywhere. Agrippina knew her sons, especially the older ones, were seen as potential threats to Emperor Tiberius and his tricky advisor. She had to fight, not with swords, but with her spirit and her public presence, to keep her children safe and hopeful for a future in power. Think of it like this. A parent might work 2 jobs, save every penny, or move to a new town, all to give their child the best chance at a good life. Even if it means great personal sacrifice, they're building a fortress of opportunity, brick by brick, against all the odds. Agrippina was doing something similar, but the stakes were much higher. She was trying to secure her son's place in line for the throne, protecting them from poison and political plots, even as she faced exile and punishment herself. Her fight was a constant battle against fear and manipulation, driven by an endless well of maternal devotion. It's a quiet, desperate courage, one that sacrifices everything for the children she birthed into a world that often felt like a trap. And that's why her story still matters. A mother's love, even in the face of absolute power, can become an unbreakable, shining force. Platia Urgulanija, a powerful family's unlucky daughter. Have you ever wondered if someone could have everything, a powerful family, a respected name, and still be incredibly unlucky? It's a strange thought, right? Platia Urgulanija's story shows us that even in ancient Rome, being born into power didn't guarantee a happy life. She came from one of the most important Roman families, and for a time, she was even married to the future Emperor Claudius. On the outside, her life looked perfect. She was meant for greatness. But here's the thing about life. It doesn't always go as planned. Plosh's story turned dark, and it's a quiet tragedy of a woman whose world crumbled around her. Her marriage to Claudius ended in a very public, difficult divorce. The reasons were unclear, but it was a huge scandal. Then, accusations came against her. Claims of adultery, which was a huge deal back then, and even whispers of murder. Can you imagine the shame, the weight of those words, especially for someone in such a public family? This can help you understand how much reputation mattered in Roman society. For a woman, losing your good name could take away everything, even if you were from a powerful family. It was like a house of cards collapsing. And then there was her family life. She had a son who died young, which is heartbreaking. But then, Claudius, her ex-husband, even rejected their other child, a daughter named Claudia. He claimed the girl wasn't his, refusing to acknowledge her. This was a final, painful public blow. Think of it like this. Imagine a popular celebrity, someone who seems to have it all: fame, money, a perfect image. But behind the scenes, they're going through huge personal losses, public scandals, and family heartbreak that money can't fix. Their status doesn't protect them from immense pain. Placia Ergulanilla lived with that kind of crushing sadness. Her story reminds us that beneath all the fancy titles and grand houses, people are just people. They face incredible sadness and unfairness, even when the world expects them to be strong and untouched. Sometimes, the most powerful people carry the heaviest, most hidden sorrows. And that's why it matters to remember her, not just as a name, but as a person who faced so much. Calpurnia, Caesar's wife in her ominous dream. Have you ever woken up from a dream that felt so real, it made your heart race, and you just knew it meant something important? That feeling, a heavy sense of dread, is what Julius Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, experienced one night. She wasn't just any woman. She was married to the most powerful man in Rome, and her dream would become a chilling warning that almost changed history. Calpurnia lived a life of luxury, but also one with immense pressure. Being Caesar's wife meant always being aware of the dangers that surrounded him. On the night before his assassination, she had a nightmare that shook her to her core. In her dream, she saw Caesar's statue bleeding, and the very building they were in seemed to collapse around them. She woke up terrified, certain that evil was coming for her beloved husband. Back then, people in Rome took dreams and omens very seriously. They believed the gods often sent messages through them, especially about important events or powerful leaders. So, when Calpurnia tearfully begged Caesar not to go to the Senate that day, he listened. He saw the genuine fear in her eyes, the raw emotion of a wife desperate to protect her husband from a fate she had glimpsed. Think about it like this. Sometimes, you just get a gut feeling that something isn't right. Maybe you see a dark cloud and know it's going to pour, even if the forecast says otherwise. Or you feel a strange quietness before a big storm hits. That deep, unsettling intuition Calpurnia felt was like that, but about her husband's life. Caesar, for a time, actually believed her. He decided to stay home, convinced by her love and her ominous vision. But others, men with their own plans, eventually persuaded him that staying home would make him look weak, a man afraid of a woman's dream. So, against Calpurnia's desperate pleas, he left for the Senate. We know what happened next. Caesar went, and he was assassinated. Calpurnia's dream, born of fear and love, was tragically true. It reminds us how powerful intuition can be, and how sometimes the warnings we feel deep inside, or the gentle whispers of someone who loves us, are the most important things we could ever listen to, even when the world tries to tell us otherwise. Claudia, a Roman woman known for her controversies. Have you ever felt like everyone had an opinion about you, even if they didn't really know your true self? Imagine that feeling etched into history, magnified 1,000 times. This is the story of Claudia, a Roman woman whose life became a whirlwind of public controversy. Claudia came from one of Rome's most powerful families, but her name wasn't remembered for virtue or loyalty, which noble Roman women were expected to embody. Instead, Claudia became famous for causing huge public arguments and whispered scandals with almost everything she did or was accused of doing. Ancient Rome had strict rules for women, especially those from important families. They were meant to be modest, devoted wives and mothers. But Claudia seemed to break these rules again and again. Stories swirled around her like a storm. People said she threw wild parties, had many lovers, and some whispered she even poisoned her husband. Her own brother, a very powerful politician, often used her name in public fights, painting her as a symbol of everything wrong and loose in Roman society. It was like living inside a never-ending rumor mill, with every rumor recorded for all time. Think about how gossip spreads in school, right? How quickly an idea about someone can form, even if it's not totally true. Now, imagine if those whispers weren't just in the hallways, but shouted in public squares by powerful leaders, shaping how everyone saw you. That's a little bit like Claudia's world. Her choices, real or imagined, were always under a spotlight, constantly judged. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What was Claudia truly like? Was she really the scandalous figure others described, or was she simply a woman who dared to live differently, and then paid a high price? Her story reminds us how incredibly powerful public opinion can be. It shows how easily a person's life can be defined by the stories told about them, especially when they don't have a strong voice. Claudia's legacy isn't just about her, but about the judgments people made, and what that says about their world, and maybe about ours too. Sempronia, a woman of talent and trouble. Have you ever known someone who seemed to have everything, talent, intelligence, charm, but whose life still turned into something complicated, maybe even sad? Here's the thing. Ancient Rome had women just like that. One of them was Sempronia, a woman born into a powerful family, who was known for her incredible mind and artistic gifts. She could sing beautifully, play music, dance with grace, and speak with real cleverness. Imagine someone at your school who excels at every club, every performance, effortlessly. That was her. But here's the problem. Roman society had very strict rules, especially for women of her status. While Sempronia used her talents, she also chose a path that led her into deep trouble. She was drawn to excitement, and perhaps a sense of rebellion. She got caught up in a dangerous plot, led by a man named Catiline, who wanted to overthrow the government. Think of it like a really smart kid who, instead of using their brain for good, gets involved with a group planning something seriously risky, something that could hurt a lot of people and themselves. Her brilliance, which could have been used for so much good, became tangled in conspiracy and scandal. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What makes someone with so much potential choose a difficult, even dangerous, road? It's not just about what gifts you have, but about the choices you make with them. Sempronia's story is a reminder that talent is a powerful thing, but it's our character and our decisions that truly shape our legacy. Her life makes us think about how even the brightest stars can dim if they don't have a steady path. Valeria, a daughter of a Roman king. Her story. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be known for who your family is, instead of just who you are? Imagine being a princess, born into a royal family, only to see your entire world crash down around you. This was Valeria's story. She was the daughter of Servius Tullius, one of Rome's last kings. Her life began in the palace, surrounded by privilege. But then, sorrow found its way to her door. Here's the thing about old Rome. It wasn't always a republic. It used to have kings. Her father, Servius Tullius, was a king many people loved. He tried to make Rome better for everyone. But power, it can twist people. Valeria's own sister Tullia and her husband Tarquin wanted the throne for themselves. They were hungry for power, and that hunger led to something truly awful. They had Valeria's father murdered. Imagine that, your own family turning against itself, right there in the streets of the city you call home. Valeria lived through this shocking betrayal. She saw her father's reign end in blood, and then watched as her sister's husband, Tarquin the Proud, seized the crown. Everything she knew, everything that was stable, suddenly shattered. It's a bit like when a strong old tree in your neighborhood gets hit by lightning during a storm. One moment it's standing tall, the next it's broken, changed forever, and the space it filled feels empty. That's how Valeria's world must have felt. She carried the weight of her family's tragedy. Her story reminds us that even those born into great power can face the deepest heartbreaks. It shows us how fragile even strong foundations can be, and how one person can be caught in history's changing tides. In her quiet endurance, Valeria reflects a profound strength, the kind that surfaces when you have to keep going, even after everything is gone. Tullia Ciceronis, Cicero's daughter, a life of learning. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to grow up surrounded by the brightest minds, constantly learning, always asking questions? Imagine your home filled with books, discussions, and the kind of deep thinking that makes your brain buzz. That was life for Tullia Ciceronis, the daughter of one of Rome's most famous speakers and thinkers, Cicero. For many girls in ancient Rome, education stopped at the basics, managing a household, maybe some simple reading. But Tullia was different. Her father, who loved words and wisdom, made sure his daughter had access to a world usually for boys. It wasn't just about reading books. It was about truly understanding the world, philosophy, history, the way people think. Think about it like this. If you have a favorite subject, maybe science or history, and you get to spend every day learning about it from the very best teacher, someone who truly loves what they do, That's the kind of gift Tullia received. Her mind was a garden, and Cicero helped it bloom, filling it with knowledge and a deep appreciation for the finer points of life. She wasn't just hearing information, she was part of the conversations, the debates that shaped Rome's future. Her father saw her not just as a daughter, but as a fellow intellectual, a soul capable of immense understanding. But here's the thing about her life lived so fully, so deeply connected to big ideas, it means feeling deeply too. Tullia lived in a time of great change and political turmoil. The world she knew was often chaotic, and even with all her learning, she faced heartbreak. Her life reminds us that knowledge isn't just power, it's also a source of great comfort and strength when the world around you feels uncertain. It's like having an inner world, a beautiful place no one can ever take from you, even when outer circumstances are harsh. And that's why her story matters. It tells us that what we learn, what we truly understand, becomes a part of who we are. A lasting treasure no matter what challenges come our way. It's a quiet strength, always there, always yours. Claudia Marcella Major, a niece of Augustus. Her quiet strengths. Have you ever thought about different kinds of strength? We often picture strength as loud, a warrior's shout, a big speech. But what about strength that isn't seen? The kind that works quietly, holding things together. That's the power we find in Claudia Marcella Major. She was a niece to Augustus, Rome's first emperor. Imagine growing up in such a powerful family. Every choice she made, every marriage, impacted the Roman Empire. Claudia Marcella wasn't a general or a politician. She was tied to Rome's most powerful man. Her story is often told through her relationships, her marriages, her children. Here's the thing, sometimes simply enduring, holding your ground with grace in a world pulling at you. That's a mighty strength. Think of an oak tree's roots. You see the strong trunk, the wide branches. That's obvious strength. But without roots, hidden underground, anchoring the tree, it wouldn't stand. Claudia Marcella was like those roots. Her quiet presence, her steady nature, her way of navigating a world without seeking attention were her foundations. She lived through many changes, often married for political reasons. Her personal feelings might have been set aside. Still, she continued. She raised her children, keeping her position with quiet resolve. History often remembers the loud voices, the dramatic acts, but true strength can be a silent steadiness. It can be an unwavering heart that keeps going, keeps caring, keeps existing with integrity. It reminds us that even if our names aren't shouted, how we carry ourselves, our quiet impact, can be just as important. It's a gentle power, often unnoticed, but absolutely essential. Cornelia Cinilla, mother of Julius Caesar, a dignified matron. Have you ever wondered about the people behind history's biggest names, the quiet influences shaping someone before they step into the spotlight? Today, we're thinking about Cornelia Cinilla, the mother of none other than Julius Caesar. You might not know her name as well, but her story tells us something important about strength and legacy. In ancient Rome, a mother was the heart of the home, teaching her children values and dignity. Cornelia was known as a dignified matron. This means she was a respected woman who carried herself with honor. She came from a very old and powerful Roman family, the Cornelii, but marrying into the Julian family meant facing a Rome often filled with political danger. Imagine your parents having strong beliefs, even when the world feels chaotic. That steady presence helps you learn who you are and what you stand for. Think about a towering oak tree. We see its massive trunk and branches reaching high, but what makes it strong, able to stand against storms, are its roots. They are hidden, unseen, deep in the earth, holding everything up and nourishing the tree. Cornelia Cinilla was like those roots for Julius Caesar. She didn't lead armies or give speeches. Her power was in raising her son, giving him a foundation of character and values. So, while history books often focus on the grand achievements of men like Caesar, it's good to remember the women who quietly, yet powerfully, helped shape them. Cornelia shows us that true strength isn't always loud or public. Sometimes, it's the steady, unwavering dignity of a mother. Her gentle lessons echo through time, making an unseen, yet unforgettable, mark on the world. Her influence was a quiet force, but incredibly deep. Aurelia Cotta, Caesar's mother, known for virtue. Have you ever thought about how much a mother shapes who her child becomes? Imagine being the mother of one of history's most famous figures, Julius Caesar. This was Aurelia Cotta. Her name might not be as famous as her son's, but in ancient Rome, she was known for something powerful, her virtue. Here's the thing about virtue in Roman times. It wasn't just about being good. It meant having strong moral character, acting with integrity, and always doing what was right. Aurelia Cotta lived this every day. She was known for her sensible choices, her honesty, and her deep dedication to her family. She made sure her children, especially young Julius, received an excellent education. She kept their home running smoothly, a place of order and respect where good values were lived out daily. Think of it like building something important, like a skyscraper or a really strong bridge. The part you see is amazing, right? But the most critical part is hidden, the foundation. If the foundation isn't solid, if it's not built with careful planning and integrity, the whole structure will eventually fall apart. Aurelia Cotta was that kind of foundation for Julius Caesar. Her quiet strength and unwavering character provided the stable ground from which he could rise. Her reputation, her very being, lent credibility and respect to her son even before he achieved greatness. People knew he came from a good, honorable home. It's easy to focus on the flashy conquerors and the dramatic battles, but sometimes the greatest influence comes from a steady, guiding hand, a heart full of integrity, far from the public eye. Aurelia's life teaches us that quiet strength matters. It reminds us that character is built not in grand gestures, but in the daily choices we make, in how we treat others, and in the values we hold dear. And this quiet, consistent virtue can profoundly shape not just one person, but the very course of history itself. Asia Maior, Augustus's mother, a line of greatness. Have you ever thought about how someone truly becomes great? Not just famous, but someone who really leaves a mark on the world. For Augustus, who became one of Rome's most powerful emperors, a huge part of that answer lies with his mother, Atia Maior. She wasn't a warrior queen or a public speaker, but her quiet strength shaped the man who would lead an empire. Think of it like a giant oak tree. You see its strong branches and wide leaves reaching high, but its real power comes from its deep, hidden roots. Asha was like those roots for Augustus. She didn't stand on public stages. Instead, her life, her choices, and the values she taught him were the solid ground his character grew from. She came from a highly respected family, connected directly to Julius Caesar himself. This connection was important, sure, but Atia also gave Augustus something even more vital: a stable home, a strong sense of duty, and a very careful upbringing. She made sure he got a great education and learned the manners and responsibilities expected of a young Roman noble. It was a time when family honor meant everything, and Atia upheld that honor with grace and intelligence. This can help you understand it. Think about how your own parents or guardians teach you right from wrong, or push you to do your best in school. They might not be famous, but their daily efforts, their belief in you, those small actions stack up. They build who you are, piece by piece. That's a lot like Asia's deep influence on Augustus. Her legacy isn't written in battle victories or grand laws. It's found in the heart and mind of her son, who went on to rule an entire empire. It reminds us that behind every grand story, there are often quieter, deeper currents of love and guidance. The hidden strength of a mother, gently guiding, can truly shape history, making a mark that lasts for centuries. Lalia Paulina, an empress known for her jewels. Have you ever thought about what makes someone truly shine? Is it what they wear, or something deeper inside them? In ancient Rome, there was a woman named Lalia Paulina. She was famous, not for her grand decisions or brave deeds, but for something much more glittery: her jewels. Lalia Paulina wasn't just wealthy, she was incredibly rich, and she loved to show it. She would often appear in public wearing a fortune in diamonds, pearls, and emeralds. Imagine someone walking around with so much sparkle that it almost hurt to look at them. This wasn't just a necklace or a ring. It was her entire outfit, covered in precious stones. People talked about it, wrote about it. Her beauty was almost secondary to the breathtaking display of her wealth. But here's the thing. While all those jewels were amazing to see, what did they truly mean for Lily? Was it about power, showing she belonged in the highest circles? Sometimes, when we put on our best clothes, or wear a special piece of jewelry, we feel a certain way. We want to feel important, maybe even a little bit invincible. But if that feeling only comes from what's on the outside, what happens when it's taken away? Think about how you feel when you have a super fancy new phone, or a cool brand name backpack. For a little while, it feels exciting, and you might think it makes you cooler or more popular. But that feeling doesn't usually last. It doesn't truly change who you are as a person, or how your real friends see you. The phone can break, the backpack can get old, and then what? Lalia Paulina's life, despite all her dazzling jewels, was not happy or peaceful. Her immense wealth and connection to the imperial family actually put a target on her back. The very things that made her famous also made her vulnerable. She eventually lost everything, including her life, because of the jealousy and ambition of others. It makes you wonder, did all that sparkle ever bring her true joy? Or was it just a heavy weight, a kind of armor that couldn't protect her heart? Maybe what truly makes someone shine isn't worn on the outside, but built from within. Vipsania Julia, granddaughter of Agrippa, her lost love. Have you ever felt like someone else decided a huge part of your life? Imagine Vipsania Julia, granddaughter of Agrippa, a powerful general. Her life seemed set, but for her, even being close to power meant her own choices, and her heart weren't truly hers. Her story shows how fragile happiness can be, even for those in power. Vipsania Julia married Lucius Aemilius Paulus. She dreamed of a future with him. Family, quiet moments, growing old. We all know that feeling, wanting to share life with someone. But in Rome, harsh politics often tore lives apart. Then, Lucius was accused of plotting against Emperor Augustus. We don't know the full truth, but Lucius was executed. Imagine that sudden, shocking loss. It's like planning a whole summer with your best friend. Suddenly, they're gone, and plans vanish. The emptiness must have crushed Vipsania Julia. Her heartbreak didn't stop. Later, her own grandfather, Augustus, exiled her. Accused of bad conduct, she went to a lonely island. She lost her husband, her good name, her freedom. Her world was taken by an emperor's command. Vipsania Julia's life is a quiet lesson. It reminds us that things we hold dear, like love and planned futures, can be taken by forces outside our control. Her ancient story echoes timeless sorrow. Some losses run deeper than sadness, carved by power, leaving an ache for a life never lived. Claudia Antonia, Claudius's daughter, a family's sad fate. Have you ever thought about how much your family's story shapes your own, especially in a world long ago? Claudia Antonia lived in ancient Rome, a daughter of Emperor Claudius. You might think being a princess means a perfect life, but for her, it brought a lot of sadness and danger. Her life shows us how complicated and heartbreaking things could get for people born into powerful families. In Rome, family wasn't just about love. It was about power, alliances, and who would rule next. Her father, Claudius, was emperor. But here's the thing. His last wife, Agrippina, was super ambitious. She wanted her own son, Nero, to become emperor, even if it meant pushing aside Claudius's other children. This created a tangled web of family rivalries, where everyone was trying to get ahead. Claudia Antonia was married a few times, mainly for political reasons, to strengthen connections for her family. And then, Nero, her stepbrother, eventually became emperor. This connection, which seemed important, soon became a huge problem for her. Sometimes, just being related to someone powerful meant you were in constant danger, walking on eggshells every day. Imagine you're part of a really big, complicated board game, but you're just a game piece, and someone else is making all the moves. You don't get to choose where you go or what happens to you. One wrong move by a powerful player, and suddenly your piece is out of the game, even if you did nothing wrong. After Claudius died and Nero was in charge, Nero saw anyone from the old family as a threat to his power. Claudia Antonia had done nothing wrong. Her very existence was seen as a danger to his rule. So, Nero eventually made her marry someone he disliked, and then he ordered her to be killed. It wasn't about her choices. It was about her name, her bloodline, and the emperor's fear. Her story is a sad reminder of how fragile life could be, even for those at the very top of society. It shows us that sometimes people become victims not because of their actions, but because of the powerful tides of history and the fears of others. It makes you think about how lucky we are to have more freedom to choose our own paths, far away from such dangerous games. Rufina, a businesswoman who built her fortune. Have you ever thought about truly building something amazing from nothing? Not a game score, but a whole life, a whole fortune, just from your own smarts and hard work. In ancient Rome, for most women, that kind of dream felt impossible. Their lives were often decided, usually around family duties. But then there was Rufina. She was different. We don't know much about her early life. What we do know is, she wasn't born rich, or married into money. Rufina built her own success. She owned brickyards, bricks, simple, strong, essential. Every grand building, every home in Rome, needed bricks, and Rufina made, sold, and supplied them across the city. Here's the thing. This wasn't just a job. It was a huge statement. Men held most business power then. Rufina created her own space. She wasn't asking permission. She was making opportunities. She understood how to make something people needed and deliver it efficiently. It's like if you started a small project, maybe selling handmade bracelets online, and it became so popular everyone wanted them. You'd be in charge, creating, marketing, shipping. Rufina did that, but with huge brick factories, helping build a city. Imagine the careful planning, the long hours, the determination. Every brick sold showed her sharp mind and tireless effort. She must have felt such a quiet, powerful pride. Her story reminds us that even when the world sets rules or tells you your path, there's always a chance to make your own way. Rufina didn't just earn a fortune, she built a powerful example of independence, brick by brick. That lesson still rings true, showing us that courage and intelligence can truly build anything, even against big odds. Alia Patina, an empress who returned to power. Have you ever felt like a chapter in your life was completely closed, only for it to surprisingly reopen later on? Like a story you thought was finished, but then you get to write a new ending. Alia Patina's life gives us a glimpse into this powerful, unexpected feeling. She was married to Emperor Claudius, a very important man in ancient Rome. But their marriage wasn't meant to last. They divorced, and she stepped away from the spotlight, probably thinking her days of imperial power were over. It must have been a strange shift. Going from empress to a private citizen. Imagine the whispers, the change in how people treated her. She likely had to adjust to a completely different kind of life. But here's the thing. Years later, after Claudius's next wife died, Alia Patina was actually considered again as a possible bride for the emperor. She was on the shortlist, an option to step back into that powerful role. Even though Claudius eventually chose someone else, the mere fact she was considered is huge. Think about it like this. Maybe you tried out for a school play, didn't get a part, and felt pretty sad about it. You moved on. Then, months later, the director calls you because someone dropped out, and they think you'd be perfect. Suddenly, that door you thought was shut forever swings open a little, reminding you that your talent was always there, waiting. That feeling of being seen, of being valuable again, even if things don't go exactly as planned, can be really moving. It shows us that life doesn't always follow a straight line. Sometimes, the paths we thought were closed can lead to unexpected moments of recognition. Our worth isn't always obvious to everyone at first glance, but it can shine through in surprising ways, even after time has passed. Hostilia, a woman who challenged the status quo. Have you ever looked at a rule and quietly wondered, why is it this way? Or felt a small, steady push inside, urging you to do something different? That feeling, that moment of questioning the usual, is what it means to challenge the status quo. It's about pushing against the way things are normally done, even in small ways. In ancient Rome, life laid out very clear paths, especially for women. Their roles were often tied to home, family, and tradition. But even within these strong walls, some women, like Hostilia, found ways to make their own impact. History doesn't always shout their stories. Instead, it whispers of their quiet strength, their hidden influence, and the powerful decisions made behind the scenes. Hostilia's choices, her leadership, or the values she instilled, could shape generations. This unseen power, a steady hand guiding a family, was a different kind of strength, yet powerful nonetheless. Think of a small, persistent crack in a sidewalk. It doesn't scream for attention, but over time, it slowly changes the landscape. It pushes through, finding its own path. Challenging the status quo isn't always about grand, public speeches. Sometimes, it's about a firm belief held deep inside, a quiet refusal to accept what doesn't feel right. Or, it's the unseen power of raising children who carry new ideas into the world. Hostilia's story, even without dramatic battles, reminds us that true change often begins quietly. It starts with a whisper, a question, or a single person choosing to live their truth. It's about the quiet courage to be yourself, to nurture what matters, and to let your actions, however subtle, ripple outwards. Her life teaches us the deep power found in simply being, and in shaping the hearts and minds of those who follow. This, in itself, is a profound challenge to any old way of thinking.